all for you.
Yeah. We fired the moderator, so it's my mic tonight. No, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name is Stephen Buffalo. I'm from the Samson Cree Nation in Treaty 6 territory, and also a very proud member and honored to be part of this Alberta Next Panel. Tonight, we acknowledge that we're in the Treaty 8 territory, a traditional meeting ground and traveling route for many Indigenous people, including the Cree, Dene, and the Métis, whose histories, culture, and traditions continue. For all who came before us, and all who will come after us, and all who are here tonight, let's have a great discussion about our tremendous province. I would like to introduce our moderator, the one who will take control of everybody and keep you to 45 seconds, Bruce McAllister. Right?
Hello, Grande Prairie. How's everybody tonight? I got to tell you, we were pumped up to come out tonight and to hear all of you clapping and your applause. That's really great because sometimes we're dodging eggs and tomatoes, and you never know what's coming. So it seems like a friendly environment. My name is Bruce McAllister. Happy to be your moderator tonight as we talk about Alberta, our future, and maybe come up with some ideas on things that we might do better. And we're sure looking forward to hearing from you all tonight. The Premier is here with us tonight. She's wearing her Calgary Stampeder red, or flames, if you prefer. The truth is, there are more Oiler fans on this panel than Flames, but we do have an amazing panel that we've assembled, folks, and they're Albertans just like you who care deeply about the province, and we reached out to them from various backgrounds and professions and asked them if they would give us some of their time to travel around, meet Albertans, give a perspective, and mostly hear the perspective of Albertans. So they've done that. We're grateful. I'm going to introduce you to them all in a moment. Promise you'll hear from them at least once tonight, some maybe a couple of times. But that's coming up, and a few housekeeping rules. I always go over these, and I know they're not for the great majority, but I do have to mention, when you come to the microphone a little bit later, when we talk about some things, please be respectful and mind your language and all of those things. We ask you to limit yourselves to once to the mic so that everybody gets a chance to speak. And that said, if you've got a burning desire to speak to a couple of the topics, just so long as everyone in front of you speaks that hasn't, we'd be okay with that. But we do want to keep the questions on topic as well. So if you have a question about, healthcare, education, and all those things, they're all very important topics. But we're here to talk about our relationship with Ottawa tonight and what we might do differently going forward. So if your questions are about those topics, the MLAs of the area, Ron Wiebe and Nolan Dick, are here. Guys, I can't see where you're at. It's pretty bright up here, but give a wave. They're here with their staff. Gents. And they will certainly take those questions. And if you ever need a good meal, I'm telling you, Ron Wiebe, that's the place to go. His wife is amazing. We had a retreat up here and spent some time at their house. Still raving about it. Okay, let's meet these folks. First of all, the chair of the Alberta Next Panel is the Premier of Alberta. That's Danielle Smith. Elected in May of 23 is MLA from Leduc-Beaumont, Brandon Lunty. The president of Questerre Energy is Michael Binion. The newly elected MLA representing Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills, Tara Sawyer. A registered acupuncturist, Dr. Benny Zhu. The president of the Business Council of Alberta, that is Adam Legg. My friend, former teammate, all-around good guy, president and CEO of the Indian Resource Council of Canada, Stephen Buffalo. The Minister of Environment and Protected Areas and the lady responsible for getting Stephen Guilbeault removed from Cabinet, Rebecca Schultz, is here tonight. The former Alberta Court of Appeal Justice from 2009 until 2023. His Honour, Your Worship, Bruce MacDonald, is with us. We have a family and emergency room doctor from Olds, Dr. Aiken Okaswati. And a rural advocate, certainly a strong advocate for rural Alberta, a grain farmer, but also an MLA Glenn Van Dyken. And the chair of the Premier's Council on Multiculturalism, who tells a great story about immigration and how things are today and how they were back when, Samita Aman is here tonight. A few of our panelists are away. That's okay. We'll just have more time to hear from you tonight here in Grande Prairie. But let's kick things off the way we should. Let's invite the Premier up to say good evening and get us going. Premier?
Well, thank you so much, Bruce, and thank you all for being here this evening. I should mention we have one other minister here, and that's Minister Todd Lowen, Minister responsible for fighting forest fires. Thank you so much for being here, Todd. You're doing a terrific job for us. And I'm so happy to be here with my fellow Alberta Next panelists. I want to thank everyone for being here and participating in this really important process that we've been crisscrossing the province for to engage directly with you, Albertans. It is so great to be in the Peace Country tonight, and thank you for being out with us tonight, because I know we're still enjoying the last few days of summer. It's beautiful out there. You could have been doing a lot of things, and so I'm glad you chose to spend your time here with us tonight. Grande Prairie is a regional powerhouse with a young, diverse, and thriving population of ambitious Albertans. I know, because my brother's one of them. He moved up here many years ago. He's not here just yet, but it's hard to miss when he walks in the room. He's pretty tall. Yeah, with economic strength and energy, agriculture, forestry, logistics, and retail, this great city has so much going for it, and there is an awful lot to protect here. These industries depend on support of governments, on stable trading relationships, access to world markets, and they may be vulnerable to the political currents that we're navigating, both federally and internationally. We want to give the people of Grande Prairie a chance to weigh in on Alberta's future, and I want to thank each of you again for coming out today to take part in this really crucial engagement process, because the conversations that we have tonight and throughout the Alberta Next engagement period, which is going to come to an end soon — this is one of our last in-person meetings, we've got one more in Calgary, and then we'll have an online one on October the 1st. They're going to help shape the future of our province, and I'd encourage you to just go look at the last time our government did a panel like this. It was the Fair Deal panel. And Albertans came up with what turned out to be 25 recommendations that have guided a lot of our work in the last 5 years. So, for instance, we had the Equalization referendum that came out of a suggestion from the panel. The panel wanted us to reduce internal trade barriers, and we've been doing that all across the country. They wanted us to create economic corridors, and we've signed many economic corridors agreements, most recently with Saskatchewan and Ontario, as well as with Yukon. They wanted us to challenge federal legislation in our areas of jurisdiction. Sadly, we've got 15 lawsuits going, because that's how often the federal government has invaded our jurisdiction. We've established a chief firearms officer, which was also a recommendation from that committee. They wanted us to create a presence in Ottawa, which we have. We now have an office there. Diversify our energy sector. We have done that in spades. Relentlessly pursue more market access. I've been talking about doubling our oil and gas production, and I'm hoping for a breakthrough. And also referenda and citizen-initiated referenda. Those are all ideas that came out of the Fair Deal panel. And it's just an example of the kind of thing that we're hoping to be able to get out of our engagement with you tonight. For the last 10 years, of course, Ottawa has taken direct aim at Alberta's core industries through the federal government, with Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines bill, to the tanker ban, the oil and gas emissions cap, which really works like a production cap, and their net zero mandates on electricity and vehicles, just to name a few. In just the last 10 years alone, the result has been more than $500 billion in global investment capital has disappeared. It was destined for our resource sector, but instead it went elsewhere. That's cost us hundreds of thousands of jobs. It's cost us hundreds of billions in GDP, as well as royalties that would have allowed for us to invest more in healthcare and education and other important public infrastructure. If Canada is to be a strong and unified country, it has to include a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, able to pursue our economic potential and well-being without being held back by our own federal government in our own country. Regardless of what each of us believes, however, about these issues or what path we think is best, we as Albertans must be able to respectfully debate and discuss the issues here with our friends, with our family members, and with our neighbours. And I know if we do that, in the end, our province will find the very best solutions to these immense challenges that we face, and we'll come out stronger and freer than ever. Because I will always put my faith in Albertans to find the right path. I trust you, and I look forward to hearing from you tonight, and as we complete this engagement process in the rest of the province in the next few days. So thanks for being out here, and I'll turn it back over to Bruce.
Thank you, Premier. Okay, so I'll explain sort of how things are going to go tonight, or at least how we hope they are. So we have 6 topics to discuss, and we've got a video for each topic, and we'll play that video. And when it's playing, if you'd like to speak to it, come on up to one of the 2 microphones situated here in the room, and we'll let you say your comments when the video is done. We've allotted 45 seconds for everybody to talk. We kind of found that to be the sweet spot. There will be some of you, no matter how many times I tell you, that go like a minute and a half, and we do our best to try and let you finish and wrap up your thought, but please 45 seconds, and then we get to as many people as we can. The topics are, the first one will be equalization and transfers. We'll talk about a proposed Alberta pension plan. We'll talk about a proposed provincial police force. I know you'll have something to say about that and how things are going here. Constitutional changes is a topic, immigration reform in this country and province, and provincial tax collection. And if you have something to say about Ottawa and Alberta, and one of those topics doesn't cover it, we have 15-20 minutes at the end where we'll open it up to come back to those that didn't quite get in time, or to those of you that might have something else to say about Ottawa. So that's how it's going to go, about 45 seconds or so. And a reminder, local issues, there are some big ones going on provincially. Those we'll save for another time, or certainly get your MLA to help you with. So when I cut somebody off for that, don't give me heck. I warned everybody, okay? It's about our province's future with Ottawa, and truly, we get some great ideas from Albertans. So maybe you have some to share with us tonight. You don't have to ask a question. You can merely make a comment, but we'll give you that 45 seconds, and we'll get going. So with that, why don't we roll the first video tonight, and it is on equalization and transfers.
Our next topic is reforming federal equalization and transfers. Since 2005, Alberta taxpayers have contributed, on average, $23 billion more per year to the federal government in federal taxes than they received back in projects, benefits, and other spending from Ottawa. That's a net loss to Albertans of nearly $500 billion in just 20 years. Most of those redistributed Alberta tax dollars are spent by Ottawa and Quebec and other liberal-leaning provinces across the country. And part of that massive fiscal transfer out of Alberta comes through the Federal Equalization Program, which has seen Alberta pay over $67 billion into the program since 1957, while receiving back not a single penny since 1965. In 2021, Albertans voted in a referendum to remove equalization from the Constitution, but Ottawa completely ignored us. So what next? Alberta can't stop these federal transfers on its own. The Alberta government doesn't write a check to Ottawa each year, and we can't ask Albertans to stop paying their federal taxes. The fact is, fixing this problem will require political support from other provinces. One option that would be appealing to most other provinces is to have the provinces collect a larger share of overall taxes. This is how it could work. Currently, Ottawa collects over 60% of all the federal and provincial taxes that Canadians pay. The Ottawa bureaucracy takes its portion, with the remainder inefficiently and unequally distributed to the provinces. The dollars we do get back have a lot of strings attached, forcing us to run our provincial programs and build infrastructure the way Ottawa wants us to. No provinces want that, especially the big ones like Quebec, Ontario, BC, and Alberta. What if we cut out the middleman and instead had provincial governments that are responsible for delivering health, education, and social services collect around 60% of all taxes, with Ottawa receiving the rest? Ottawa, in turn, would be able to end most transfer programs to the provinces, along with all the strings, bureaucracy, and waste attached to them. Quebec has already proposed having the federal government let provinces keep GST revenue generated in their provinces in return for ending the federal health transfer. Seems like a great idea. Why not apply that same logic to all federal transfers? Less money collected and wasted in Ottawa. Less federal transfers with only a modest amount of equalization for the smallest provinces and territories that actually need it. And more funds for provincial health, education, and other programs, without strings attached by Ottawa's politicians and bureaucrats. That seems like something most provinces could rally behind. So what say you, Alberta? Should Alberta take a lead role in working with the other provinces to reform federal transfers and equalization by having the provinces collect a larger share of overall taxes, with Ottawa collecting less? And are there any other strategies Alberta should be looking at to alleviate the massive federal fiscal drain to Alberta? For more information, visit alberta.ca/next.
I don't see anybody at the microphone. Oh, yes, we do. Okay. Good. Sir, you're the brave one, or ma'am, you're the brave one. You can kick us off tonight, right here.
I would like to ask the panel a question that I looked at and answered myself today, because I feel like if you look at this from a negative point of view, there is no good answer. Alberta workers pay roughly $3 billion more per year in CPP premiums than Alberta seniors get back in benefits. Which of the following best captures what you think about this? This is unfair to Alberta workers and seniors and needs to change, A. Or B, although Albertans may be subsidizing the pensions of seniors outside of Alberta, I have no issue with doing so. If I were to answer that negatively, there's no good answer. Can you?
So, is that a question about the pension plan?
It is the question from your panel
Yep.
on the pension plan.
Right. So we've got a whole subject on the pension plan coming up. Can anybody try and move that into equalization transfers?
I think she's. I think that you've identified exactly why it is a difficult decision and why we end up with people on very different sides of it. Because there are some people who do look at that and say, why are we continuing to overpay into Canada Pension Plan? Premiums that then go to Ottawa into a fund that they don't even consult us on how it's invested, and there's no control, and there's none of that comes back to us in equal measure. So that is a legitimate argument, but there's others who also say that because they've got friends or family or loved ones who live in another jurisdiction, that they're okay with that. So yeah, you've identified exactly the issue that is being debated, and people have to come to their own conclusions on that.
Excellent. Thanks for the question. Equalization and transfers over here. Sorry, over here. Nobody over there. I'm telling you, you guys, you can't believe how bright it is up here. Right over here. Thank you. Thank you. Way over here.
Okay, since Alberta wants to take a major role in collecting taxes, how about we do it this way? Why don't the municipalities get the major amount of taxes? And then when we get funded what the municipalities all need, we'll pass some money on to the Alberta government, and then the Alberta government can pass it on to the federal government. What happens to the municipalities? You take all the money away from the municipalities. We get nothing. We get cutbacks all the time.
Well, I think there is a question about the percentages on taxes.
It is. It's an interest. First of all, I would say this, that the areas of provincial responsibility are very expensive. Healthcare, education, universities, social services, supports for vulnerable, seniors, infrastructure, and on and on. So that's part of the reason why the provinces should get the lion's share of the tax revenue. Municipalities, I think, get about 5 cents out of every dollar, but that's because their level of responsibilities are much less than the other two orders of government. What we're trying to figure out here is what the split should be between the provincial government and the federal government, because the federal government takes 60% of the taxes, but they only are responsible for 30% of the cost that we all bear, whether it's for OAS and defense, courts, international trade. So what they do is they overtax, and then rather than give us back an equal share, even on a per capita basis, the excess to fund programs in Eastern and Central Canada. So that's, I think, part of what we're proposing is how do we align the areas of responsibilities with the tax revenues. I suppose we could have that same argument or that same conversation at the municipal level, but the municipalities do exactly what we want Ottawa to do. Municipalities collect all of the education portion of the property tax, and then they remit to us. That's what we're saying, is maybe we should remit all of the taxes and then just remit to Ottawa the share that we owe them, which would only be 30% rather than the 60% they're taking now.
Excellent. Michael, I'll save you for a minute. Let's go over to the mic.
Thank you. It's unfortunate Trevor Toombs not here. I did some reading of some of his work for the Calgary Policy School, and he was very clear that one of the ways that Alberta could reduce the amount that goes out of this province in terms of equalization would simply be to have a tax structure that's more similar to other provinces. We have a tax structure, and I think there's actually a chart in your own budget that says it's well over $10 billion. It's something in the neighborhood of $19 billion. That we're lower than the next lowest. Why don't we simply alter our tax structure so we can get doctors here in Grande Prairie, so we can have students funded at a higher level than the lowest in Canada? Let's just change it ourselves and not worry about Ottawa.
So raising taxes will fix our problems.
Well,
Well, I mean, if we're going to debate from the chair, I'll say raising taxes would yield you more money, and it would make it. And again, this is Trevor Toombs' analysis.
Well, that is one way.
So less money would go to Ottawa in equalization. He says that as a solution himself.
Well, I wish he was here to handle the question. He's not. But go ahead, Premier.
Well, what I would say is that the big area where we do not tax that other provinces do is having a PST, a provincial sales tax, or a harmonized sales tax. In most other jurisdictions, it's 7, I think, to 8%. So I could do a straw poll right now, because we also have legislation saying we can't impose a provincial sales tax without a positive affirmation from the people. So maybe we'll do a straw poll. How many of you would vote yes to institute a provincial sales tax? So that's part of the reason, because I think it may well change the calculation so that the pot of money that gets distributed differently, but it just means, but it wouldn't cause Ottawa to tax us any less. They would still tax us the same amount. This would just be layering on. What we're telling Ottawa is vacate some of your tax room back to us so that we can pay for our areas of jurisdiction, similar to what some of the agreements that Quebec has negotiated.
Sort of like tariffing our own goods to punish our own people. Go ahead.
So it's maybe a little off topic, but it's equalization for rural Alberta versus the cities. As northern and rural Albertans, we know what inequality feels like. Just as Albertan isn't treated fairly by Ottawa, the north and some of rural Alberta isn't treated fairly within our own province.
Maybe a little off topic?
A little bit. I'm speaking about electricity distribution costs, which are 3 to 5 times higher in northern Alberta than other regions. So here in the north, we help produce the natural gas that heats all the homes, the forestry projects that build them, and grow the food that feeds them. So why can't we be treated fair in rural Alberta?
Here's the thing. Premier, I know you want to speak to this, but if I don't do this now, this will continue with a bunch of people. We won't get to the discussion that we want to have, which is with Ottawa. So go ahead and address that question, because it's...
I'll be very quick. Yeah. I can tell you that Ron Wiebe and Nolan Dick raise this frequently. And we have been working on a number of different solutions on that. You're quite right about the distribution charges and the inequity there, and we are hoping to have a solution in the fall, because we're hearing that we're losing businesses, and it's difficult to attract people here with that differential. It's quite a bit higher than elsewhere. So thank you for raising it. And I know you're absolutely right that by having this conversation about fairness between regions at the national level, it doesn't surprise me that it came up here as well. So thanks for raising it. Okay.
And Nolan is here, so follow up by all means. Nolan and Ron can follow up with you. They're great advocates. Is this a good time, Michael, to ask you about inequities? And you're talking about Quebec. Maybe give some perspective on what you've seen through your work.
Right. Well, this is because I have a gas discovery in Quebec that they won't let me produce, so I've spent a lot of time understanding what's going on there. To channel Trevor Toome for a second, and this applies to Quebec as well, that because one thing he does say every panel is that just a 2-cent increase in the price of electricity in Quebec would change equalization for Quebec by $4 billion, and Quebec would still have the cheapest electricity in Canada. So that gets to the formulas. I think Trevor Toome's papers, and I'm busy writing an op-ed together with him right now on the Alberta pension. But I think what he's actually said is that if we had higher taxes in Alberta, it would maybe help us with things like a bigger heritage trust fund, because the way equalization works is it's based on your capacity to tax, not the actual taxes you choose to do. But an exception is resources like Hydro-Quebec. And can I go on, Bruce? Oh, yeah, it looks like I can.
Yes, you can.
But the other thing, the point that I make being in Quebec is 15 years trying to produce, one of the largest gas discoveries in Canada, which, by the way, would be worth billions of GDP to Canada, or to Alberta, because of the services that would be needed there, is that we had a former premier of Quebec, but the premier at the time, Pauline Marois, say that why should Quebec develop its resources or develop its oil and gas before we separate, because we just would end up reducing our equalization and giving it back to the country. So that tells you that there's a problem with the formula.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, let's go over to this mic. Go ahead.
Hi. I love Alberta, but I am worried about the direction we're going. My son was taught by bus drivers for an entire week. I'm facing an 8-month MRI wait, and instead I'll take myself to Edmonton and pay for it. I'm not off topic, I promise. My family pays over 6 figures in taxes, and it feels like we're just throwing money into this crumbling system, and we still just have to take care of ourselves when we're paying into the system. So would ending these equalization payments help us to thrive here and actually get care here, or what's the plan? Do we have to leave? That's where we're at.
Sure hope not. Premier, this question has come up in a different way in different panels. I actually want to give you an opportunity to answer it as you have previously.
I can answer it a couple of different ways. When I first came in, the premiers were already trying to convince the federal government to go back to the 50-50 cost sharing that they had on healthcare. That's where it began, because that's what was the deal under the Canada Health Act, is that's cost share it. And now the federal share gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So we were asking them to come up to $38 billion per year more. They ended up coming up to $38 billion over 10 years. So it gives you some idea of what we're facing, that the cost pressures on our social programs are immense, and our level of revenues are not enough to be able to keep up with it. So that being said, how do you solve it? One of them is to try to realign our taxing powers with our authorities so that we do have the dollars to keep up with that growth. The other is to develop our resources. If we had built the Northern Gateway, the Energy East pipeline, and the Keystone XL pipeline, that would have been 2.5 million barrels more per day that we were producing. The math on that at today's prices is about $55 billion a year in GDP. Governments get about 40% of that revenue. Feds and us split it 50-50, so $10 billion more per year in revenue would go a long way to help with healthcare and public infrastructure and education. Now, I can tell you all of the provinces are stretched. Just look at Quebec. Even with its massive equalization transfers, they're still running an $11 billion deficit this year, as is British Columbia. They just announced an $11 billion deficit, and we're on track to $6.5 billion. That's a demonstration that the responsibilities we have are just completely mismatched with the revenue capacity we have. So yes, if we could build more, get more revenue, or have this transfer of dollars, we'd be able to invest more in the things that people care about.
Stay though, please. We need more people like you. Over here.
To the Premier's point about deficit, the reality is Quebec is patting themselves on the back for an $8 billion surplus. At the same time, we have an $8 billion deficit announced. I'm sure somebody can shoot me down in terms of royalties on oil and gas versus taxes. I just see royalties as being another tax system. Our oil and gas was basically deemed a Canadian resource. Hydro-Quebec water, that's not a Canadian resource. BC trees aren't a Canadian resource. How about maple syrup? If you want a pipeline to the east, tell the federal government to pick up their bitumen at the Alberta-Saskatchewan border, and they can sell it at whatever price they want. Help me understand, if we have to pay them in money, some kind of financial transfer, or can we pay them in bitumen?
He might have a great idea. Thank you, sir. Let's go over this. Let's get a few more on this topic. Go ahead. Go ahead here.
Hi, I just want to start off with a quick comment. Ms. Smith, I might not have voted for you last election, but thank you and the rest of the panel for coming here this evening. We're glad that you came to have a conversation with us. Right. The question that I do have is, with Alberta Next, we are looking at what happens in the future. With a lot of the Alberta economy right now, we're resource-based. We can't control the demand and the price outside of our province for oil and gas. We can't even control the demand and price for coal. We are building on technology infrastructure here, but what are we looking at in, say, 10 years, 15 years, when Alberta becomes a have-not province?
Ooh. Well, I hope that doesn't happen, but do you want to speak to the question before the last sentence?
Well, Grant might want to talk about this, about the future of oil and gas. I think he might have a thing or two to say. Is Grant here today?
He's not.
Oh,
but he would.
Maybe Adam would have a thing or two to say
that's
about the future.
We have the president of the Business Council of Alberta. Adam, I bet your members speak of this all the time.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce, and for the question, everybody, for coming out tonight. You know, I think there's a lot of projections that say, you know, we've hit peak oil or not, but I think I saw a term today quite interesting. Instead of an energy transition, it's an energy addition. We're seeing so much in terms of the continued demand for oil and gas into the future, particularly natural gas, that is going to fuel a lot of the electricity needs globally and get higher emitting fuels in China and Asia into cleaner burning fuels. And so I think, you know, when we did a project back in 2022 called Define the Decade, it was a 10-year economic strategy for Alberta. We looked around the world and said, you know, what are those advantages that Alberta has now and into the future? We are truly globally competitive, and we can actually win and dominate this space. There are really the two key areas that I think are relevant to Grande Prairie. The first was feeding everyone healthy and sustainable food, and the second was energy solutions. There is still going to be a tremendous amount of demand for oil and gas resources and other fuels, whether it's moves to hydrogen, whether it is the addition of renewables, whether it's our critical minerals like lithium, which Alberta has one of the largest deposits in the world. We've got a diverse source of resource activity in this province that is oil and gas, that is critical minerals, that is agriculture and forestry. So the long-term prospect for the resource sector overall is very strong. So I don't see us being a have-not province in 10 years. Frankly, I don't see us being a have-not province in the future.
Thank you, Adam. I think I see two more people at the mic, and then we'll move to the next topic. So right over here.
Okay, so Alberta's the largest net contributor, positive net contributor to the income tax for Canada, also the CPP, 10 times more than Ontario gives. What makes us think, when there's more provinces that are takers, are willing to work with us so that they're not a taker anymore?
Are we going to get any cooperation federally is the question, Premier?
I can tell you that when I know that when the equalization referendum passed with 62% of people saying that we should end equalization, I think everybody had hoped that that would initiate a similar process across the country, and then we'd use the amending formula, 7 out of 10 provinces, 50% of the population. If they passed it, we'd go to the House of Commons and we might be able to do something about it. It didn't turn out that way. I still think it was worth the effort, because what happened is that Newfoundland and Labrador started asking the same questions we are. So Newfoundland and Labrador has become a net payer into Confederation, even though they are one of the smallest populations, 500,000, and the most indebted province. I think they've got $30,000 in debt per capita. And they're asking the question, Why are we, a tiny province, transferring dollars, essentially being a net contributor, while Ontario and Quebec are net recipients? That never was meant to happen. So they launched a legal challenge saying, we believe we should get equal transfers to the big provinces. British Columbia joined, Saskatchewan joined. So now we've got 4 provinces that are payers saying this current situation is unfair, and we're just going to continue with that momentum. So I think that there are more voices than ours, and that's why these kind of processes are important. We can start a conversation that might ultimately end up changing the formula and changing the direction on it.
We expect a lot of Facebook posts out of Grande Prairie tonight to the rest of Canada. Over here for the last one on this issue.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Just expanding on should Alberta take a leading role, expanding on that, how do we bridge this gap in our country? It seems like we are living in 2 realities, online and in person. It's East versus West, it's Liberal versus Conservative, Ontario versus Alberta. Talking to people in other provinces, you see it in comment sections. Many people just can't believe that Albertans have honest, good faith reasons to be disgruntled in this country, so much so that they're contemplating leaving, they're contemplating separating, they're contemplating moving away. So how do we get out that message? How do we bridge that gap across our country and kind of shed this image that people have of Alberta?
I was hoping you could tell us. It's the million-dollar question. It's what we're trying to get to by speaking to so many of you. But Premier, you're sure taking a lead role. Wouldn't you say this Premier's taken a great role in talking to the rest of the nation about what we're doing? Are you going to continue traveling around speaking Alberta's story?
I worry that I'm not monopolizing the panel. I know that Michael would have lots to say about this because he's been involved in a lot of advocacy efforts across the country. So I think he's been able to identify areas where we have more agreement than disagreement. And that's what I would say is that the online discussion and the discussion taking place in the media is very, very different than I think how regular Canadians look at it. We did some polling asking, do you want to build more pipelines to get oil and gas to market? And over 70% of the public said yes. Even in Quebec, 58% of people said yes. So sometimes the loudest voices don't represent the general view of regular folks. And I think that that's part of it. And that's why I'm very encouraged, is that the debate has now changed. All of the premiers, it doesn't matter what political stripe they are, all of the premiers have projects that they want to put forward that are resource development, that are job creating and wealth creating, and we're now finally at a point where we're seeing some of those get approved. So that's why I have a lot of encouragement that we're going to get there, because my sense of it from Albertans, and because we've seen this before, the last time independent sentiment rose to a fever pitch was in the 1980s when there was a national energy program. That was when even a separatist got elected into the legislature in Old Didsbury Three Hills. But as soon as Brian Mulroney came in and ended the national energy program, that sentiment dissipated, and we went on to have a lot of success over the intervening decade that happened after that. So I think Albertans just want to be able to create wealth. I think they don't mind sharing it so much as long as they can create it in the first place. But when they hear the federal government and other provinces say, we don't want you to develop your resources, but keep sending the money, that's what's caused the aggravation over the past 10 years. And I think we can correct that if we just build a few things.
Thank you, Premier. So just before I get to the polling question, I just want to make a point. Some people wonder how we're so how we disagree from coast to coast. Sometimes the mainstream media, frankly. In the last week, I've read 2 things from the same network. One saying that ice cream is a reason for climate change or a contributing factor, and another that fossil fuels harm your health from cradle to grave. And I think about all the people fossil fuels are helping around the world, and they were both tweeted out from a major news network. So that's part of the problem. Here's the question. Should Alberta take a lead role in working with the other provinces to reform federal transfers and equalization? Who says yes? Who says no besides the one fella? The ayes have it. Okay, the next topic for discussion, here's the video on a proposed Alberta pension plan.
Our next topic is creating an Alberta pension plan with the same or better benefits than the Canada pension plan. With a younger and more productive workforce, Alberta workers contribute about $3 billion more each year to the Canada pension plan than Alberta seniors receive in benefits. Alberta has the constitutional right to exit the CPP. And if we did, federal legislation says that Alberta would be entitled to a sizable share of the CPP assets that we could use to start our own provincial pension plan, so long as we guarantee comparable pension benefits for seniors. Quebec made the decision to start its own pension plan decades ago, and they have an agreement with Ottawa so that all retirees receive their full pension benefits, whether they worked in Quebec, retired there, or some mix of both. Alberta could negotiate a similar arrangement with Ottawa if we created our own pension plan. There are more factors to consider as well. Currently, virtually all investment decisions and management of the CPP is conducted by folks working in Ottawa and Toronto rather than Alberta. While the CPP's mandate is to maximize pension returns, in recent years, the CPP annual reports have shown an increasing focus on emissions reductions and DEI concerns, which do not always result in the highest rate of returns for the pension plan. CPP management has also become bloated and expensive. 20 years ago, the CPP had only 150 employees, with operating costs of $118 million. Today, it has ballooned to more than 2,100 employees with operating costs of about $6 billion. If Alberta opted to commence its own pension plan, the fund would be managed out of Alberta by Albertans, and investments could be focused exclusively on maximizing returns rather than adjusting for carbon dioxide and DEI-related objectives. With that all said, the CPP has consistently generated healthy returns and is a stable and critical source of income for seniors in Alberta and Canada. So, what are the benefits of Alberta choosing to withdraw from the CPP to create its own pension plan? 1. A big upfront payout. Alberta would get back a significant lump sum by exiting the CPP. The chief actuary in Ottawa has indicated our share would be at least $140 billion. That's plenty to start and build a strong Alberta pension plan from day one. 2. Better benefits for seniors, lower premiums for Alberta workers. Thanks to our younger, more productive population, an Alberta pension plan could result in Alberta workers paying lower pension premiums on their paychecks, or seniors enjoying higher pension benefits, or a mix of both. 3. Local control and boosting our economy. An Alberta pension plan would be managed right here at home, creating more jobs and growing Alberta's financial sector. We would also be insulated from the economic and demographic decline in Canada. Our investment decisions could also be steered clear of ideological decision-making and instead remain focused on the long-term rate of return for Alberta pensioners. But there are some risks to consider. 1. Uncertain payout. The CPP exit rules aren't clear in the federal legislation, and Ottawa is notoriously anti-Alberta with its decisions. So the size of the lump sum Alberta is offered could be lower than it should be. This could result in a lengthy court battle with the federal government, and it could lower our ability to increase benefit payments for seniors or lower premiums for workers. 2. Long-term risk. As with any pension plan, if the plan is mismanaged or Alberta's economy and demographics fall behind Canada, premiums would have to rise in the future in order to guarantee our seniors the same benefits they enjoy today under the CPP. Regardless, as with Quebec, Alberta's government would still be able to guarantee that an Alberta pension plan provide the same or better benefits to Alberta seniors as they now enjoy under the CPP. 3. Portability concerns. The Quebec pension plan and CPP have an agreement in place to ensure pensioners get the same single pension, regardless of where they worked or lived in Canada during their career. Alberta would expect a similar arrangement with Ottawa, but it is not guaranteed. So, should Alberta withdraw from the CPP and use Alberta's portion of the CPP to create our own Alberta pension plan? Or should we continue with the CPP as we do now?
This one can be emotional too. It's been fun to watch this as we traveled around. This is our 9th stop, and we've got one more, and then I think we do one of these online as well, virtually. But it's clear people care about their pensions, and it's clear many people want to see a change. So we're interested to see what you have tonight, and we'll go over here, or what you say tonight, to kick us off.
Good evening, Premier. James Buchanan. I've moved to Grande Prairie about 20 years ago with inspirations of eventually moving where I came from. Just curious how it would work if I was lucky enough to leave before retirement. How would the payments work? Would they be equivalent to the same as the rest of the population? And basically, how would it be a lump sum I would receive, or would it be a monthly payment that I would get?
Lots of questions.
Is Andrew Judson here today, or no? Am I having to cover for Andrew as well? Okay. Well, Let me tell you what Andrew might say. So what I would say is the rules of the pension plan are this: that you cannot exit the plan without offering equal or better benefits. That is the guarantee that we had in opting in, and what we signed on to is that the benefits would have to be equivalent. I would probably rely on somebody on the panel who might have more financial experience in how pensions work, because you know when you move around from job to job with a business pension, that there's sort of an allotment that they give you, and if you stay in that pension, then it's longer. The longer you're in it, smaller the shorter you're in it. So what I would imagine would occur is that those who have sort of a partial entitlement would probably end up getting part of it covered by an Alberta pension plan and part of it covered by a CPP. These would be the kind of things that I think would have to be worked out in the negotiation. But you have to remember that the system is a pay-as-you-go system. So it's today's current contributors who cover for today's recipients. So that's why when we talk about how we pay $9 billion a year in benefits or in contributions, and our seniors receive $6 billion in contributions, that's the same across the country. That's why it has to be kind of all or nothing. Are you all in or all not out? Because we need the people here paying for those for the pensioners. But it's the question of what happens to that extra increment. Alberta has been a net payer for the time since the plan became solvent. We're going to continue to be a net payer, but we have no control over how those dollars are invested. So I would just say that they have managed to figure out how to manage the mobility and portability of the Quebec pension plan. I suspect they would be able to figure out using similar principles about how to manage between those who served some time in Alberta but moved elsewhere.
Thanks, James. And for sure, Premier, I know Michael Binning can talk to this, but Michael, I'm going to save you for a minute or two and get to a couple of more microphone questions. So just hang on there. And James, thanks for reminding me of something. Please introduce yourself and where you're from, and then ask your question or make your comment. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Casey. I unfortunately lost both of my parents before they could claim their CPP, and they were not together when they both passed away. When you do lose your life and you pass on, CPP does not go to anybody other than the government, even if you've worked your whole life and contributed to that program. Families who have supported and cared for those people, whether they're widowed or single or not married, divorced anymore, they're not recipients to that CPP. I took care of my mother when she was sick and found out that CPP wasn't something that came to the family. It only goes to a spouse if you're married or common law. If Alberta was to do their own APP, is that something you guys could maybe structure into there? Because we take care of our parents and we take care of them when they get old and when they get sick. So that CPP that all of us as young people are contributing into the government and into the lives and take care of our seniors, when we become seniors as well, that doesn't graduate to anybody if we decide perhaps maybe we don't want to be married or we are single or we are divorced. So is that something that you guys would possibly consider in the APP program that the CPP does not currently have? Because that was a huge eye-opening to how unfair the CPP is to partnerships.
So let me try to channel Judson, because this is what he would say. The Fraser Institute just did a study on what it would look like if we had our own pension plan. So if we used our existing premiums to pay for the existing liabilities that we have, and then whatever was left over was put into each individual's account for it to grow over time, If you think about it, if our numbers are correct, it's about $1,425 per person and $1,425 per employer. That would be kind of the high end. If that instead got invested in an account in your name and then compounded over time, I think he calculates it would be something like $300,000 or $400,000 additional dollars. And then it would be something that when you pass on, if you haven't used it, you'd be able to bequeath it to somebody. That would be the alternative way that we could manage the fund, but we'd have to have control over the resources to be able to do that.
A lot of people at the microphones on this one, so Michael, hold tough. Let's go over here. Yeah, just go ahead and introduce yourself. And
I'm Ken from Athabasca.
Hey, Ken.
So, dealing with Ottawa, we're not going to get a fair deal. What we're kidding here. So you're talking about $140 billion coming from Ottawa if they so choose to give us that. If we're an independent nation, we'd have our big brother to the south to come in and basically keep Ottawa at bay and make sure we have a fair deal. We're not going to get a fair deal as Alberta as a province.
Okay. Thanks, Ken. Look, you're not alone. We've heard that from people as we travel around. Go ahead. Yeah.
My name is Margaret. I was born and raised here in Grande Prairie. I don't want you touching my CPP. That is a pension plan that my employer invested for me. That's not, no political party can touch that as of right now. If you bring that back to Alberta, what is stopping Alberta government from controlling that money and investing it however they see fit?
Thank you, Margaret. She likes it where it's at. Michael, I'll go to you now.
I might just say that we currently have a group called INCO. Stephen Harper is the chair of it, and we have our former head of the public service who's now managing that fund on our behalf. And they manage, I think, about $195 billion in assets. Most of it is the pension assets for public sector workers. And so we do have an independent body with expertise to be able to manage that. If the additional fund would very likely be managed by INCO.
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
This is something that people feel so emotional about, and it's really easy to understand if you feel that there's some money sitting for you in the Canada Pension Plan that's been saved for you, your money, the employer's money, and it's sitting there for you, and somehow you're going to come to Alberta and now you're trusting somebody else with that money. But it really misunderstands the difference between most pension plans, your RRSP, your company pension plan, which is regulated and by law must be fully funded. The Canada Pension Plan is not that. There's no money sitting there for you. You are relying completely on a government promise to pay those benefits, because right now every cent that goes in is paid out, and the only reason that there's a big fund there is it's to keep the amount we pay in below the statutory minimum. Without that fund, we'd be contributing 15-20% of our income to make the Canada Pension Plan work. So that money's not sitting there for you. There's no account with your name on it. This is the big misnomer that people think that what you're really relying on is simply a government guarantee that they will cause future young workers to pay for your retirement when you retire. So this is, I guess you could say, well, and Trevor too makes this point, perhaps relying on a federal government guarantee, even though financially they're much weaker today. Who knows, maybe in the future they'll be stronger and we'll wish that we'd relied on their guarantee. But for me, when I see the demographics of a very young Alberta and this fiscal transfer from young people to old people, which means a young province transfers to older provinces, I don't see any time in decades, if not longer, that we'll be in a position that Alberta will be able to better guarantee your pension with more younger workers with less older retired people.
Thanks, Michael. I'd like to get to a couple more from each, if I could. Right over here.
Hi, I'm Clifford there, and I've lived in the Grande Prairie area all my life. I definitely do, guys, want you to take their pension. The federal government is not trustworthy anymore. And I don't think I'm paying a whole bunch of money out there for them to throw it around to wherever they want to get their votes or whatever. I trust you guys there that you guys are going to do right for us there, and I hope you guys do get it. Thank you.
Thanks, Clifford. I promise we'll do a straw poll on this one too as soon as this discussion's over. This mic.
Hi, my name's Jody, and I was born and raised in Grande Prairie. What is preventing the Alberta government from starting a pension plan in addition to the CPP? Like, leave my money there that I've contributed already, no negotiations necessary, mandate employers to give employees the option to pay into the APP or the CPP.
We get that question. Premier?
Well, I wish we could do that because I think that would solve a lot of problems. But the problem is, as Michael has explained, there isn't money sitting in the fund with your name on it based on your past contributions. When you retire, it's the people who are paying the premiums on that day that will be paying for the benefits that you get. And so that's why it's all or nothing, is if you need to have the current people who are paying into the plan, paying for the current people who are drawing from the plan, you have to be either all in or all out. And so that's the reason Alberta's in a unique position is because every year we have more people paying into the plan than paying out. And so there is additional dollars that come out that can be reinvested. And so the question is, do we allow Ottawa to keep on taking that extra, investing it with their priorities, or do we keep that here, fund our pensioners with the current contributions and use the increment to be able to invest it for the future in the way that we described earlier? Because if you have that increment and you are putting everybody's name on it and it can grow over time, then there will be the kind of plan working the way you think that the CPP works right now but doesn't. So that would be one of the questions that we have and part of why we're having this consultation.
See a lot of people in the line. We're not going to get through everybody, and I'm going to have to ask some of you to come back up again at the end. But let's try at least a couple of more before we go back to the panel, starting on this side.
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia, and I think Mr. Michael may have answered my question already. With registered retirement savings plans are registered in your own name. With programs like registered disability savings plans and registered education savings plans that grants and bonds come from the government in matching contributions, would that be secure as well? And I'm just asking this question because my son has a disability tax credit. He's eligible for a registered disability savings plan for his retirement and medical needs. When speaking with somebody from Quebec on a holiday in Jasper, they said they were uneligible for those kind of benefits because they weren't in the same agreement with the federal government.
No, that's a tough one. Michael?
I suspect those two plans, because they're registered, so those would be something that would be done through the Canada Revenue Agency. And part of the reason why Quebec may not have those plans is because they also collect their own personal income taxes. And they do that so that they can have their own programs. And it sounds like choose not to have some of the programs that the federal government has. But those would be quite a different discussion from the CPP, because those are two different instruments. And because they're registered, it is a pot of money in the name of the person who's the beneficiary to that.
Okay, I want to take one more at least over here.
I don't have a question as much as I have a comment. My son's 7, 23 years, I'll be 65. I don't feel like I will get my CPP, and I do fully support an Alberta pension plan. Not only just because I know I'm not going to get it. When my birth mother passed away, the little bit of CPP she should have got, in my statement after her account closed out, said they overpaid her in CPP and climate incentive and kept what money was there. So I didn't even get anything. So that's just my thoughts on having the Alberta pension plan.
Thank you, and sorry to hear that. That's why we're having this discussion, though. So here's the question. I think I know where this is going. And for those of you that didn't get to the microphone, I apologize. We went a little long on the first one, so I'm going to make up a little bit of time. But you can come back at the end. Here's the question. Should Alberta create a pension plan with the same or better benefits than the Canadian pension plan? Should we do that? Who says nay? Excellent. Okay, we're off and rolling. Let's go to the next video, and this one will mean a lot to you here, and we're going to look forward to some great commentary. It is on the possibility of a provincial police force.
Our next topic is the potential creation of an Alberta police service to take over community policing from the RCMP. Today, roughly 80% of Albertans are served by local municipal police services, such as the Calgary, Edmonton, and Lethbridge City Police Services. However, Albertans living in most rural communities and a few mid-sized cities like Red Deer, Fort McMurray, and Airdrie are policed by the RCMP under Alberta's policing contract with Ottawa. And as is the case with most federal agreements, Alberta is getting shortchanged. To be clear, RCMP police officers and staff aren't the problem. They do all they can to protect us with the resources they have. The problem is Ottawa. Because the federal government is failing to provide the number of promised officers and resources to Alberta communities under the policing contract, response times are slow, staffing is stretched thin, and officers are often moved across the country at a moment's notice, resulting in little connection to the Alberta communities they serve. Furthermore, because of French language requirements, English-speaking Alberta officers do not qualify for senior RCMP positions. And ultimately, the RCMP's policing priorities are chosen by the federal government in Ottawa, rather than the provincial government in Alberta. Even the federal government itself has recently stated the RCMP should transition away from contract policing when current agreements expire in 2032. Ontario and Quebec have had provincial services for over 100 years. Why not Alberta? So, what are the benefits of Alberta withdrawing from the federal policing contract and creating our own provincial police service to provide community policing? 1, more local, more accountable. An Alberta police service would be run by and for Albertans, accountable to our province, and not to the federal government in Ottawa. Police officers and support staff could build long-term careers in the Alberta communities they know and love. And any current RCMP officers and support staff working in Alberta would be invited to join a new Alberta police service. 2, safer rural communities. With local recruitment and stable placements, rural response times would improve considerably from where they are now, and coverage would become more reliable and tailored to each municipality and region. This is especially important in underserved rural Alberta communities. 3, flexible, made-in-Alberta solution. Most Albertans already have local police services. The province would assist larger communities like Red Deer, Fort McMurray, and Airdrie to transition to their own police services, while smaller, rural communities would be policed by the new provincial police service. And of course, nothing would change for Edmonton, Calgary, and other communities that already have municipal police services in place. But there are also potential drawbacks to consider. 1, startup costs. Establishing a new police service requires significant initial investment. Hiring officers, buying equipment, building training infrastructure, and training personnel. Ultimately, the startup costs could reach into the hundreds of millions over several years. 2, loss of some federal operational funding. The federal government currently covers 30% of RCMP contract policing costs. It is therefore likely that there will be additional ongoing operational costs for the province. However, municipalities would not be saddled with those costs. So, should Alberta create an Alberta Police Service to take over community policing from the RCMP?
Well, we're really interested in hearing your story tonight in Grande Prairie. I know you guys are undergoing some change here. And so before we kick this topic off, I want to make a very important point, which we do at every one of these that we do. When we talk about the RCMP and a local Alberta force, it's not because of anything the men, the great men and women of the RCMP are doing in protecting and serving us. It is because of the bureaucracy and maybe a different system that would serve us better. So just want to make sure all of our officers feel that from us. I know they feel it from you as well. We'll start over here, and then we've got some great panelists to bring in on this one.
Hello, my name is Stacey Messner. I'm Deputy Mayor for the town of Grimshaw. Our council has a lot of questions, but we'll just ask one right now. Currently, we have a regional policing approach with the RCMP stationed in Peace River, and some residents think that if we just model what the RCMP has done by having a regional detachment under the APS, that we would still have the same issues. Long response times, not enough boots on the ground, and still way too big of an area to monitor. Is the idea that the sheriffs and the APS be stationed regionally? And if so, how would regional detachment model be any different than the level of police service that we are currently experiencing with the RCMP?
Can you just stay? Yeah, can you just stay there so we can maybe chat about some of the options? Because I can tell you what we're watching with Grande Prairie is that they had a complement of RCMP, as I understood it, of 55. They did their assessment of what it was going to cost. They thought they'd be able to save some money by going to their own police service. And instead, they decided to increase their complement. So if I understand it, they're coming out next year with 90 officers, and then they're going to be able to grow to 110. So so that's just one thing that I would say is that because the cost of an RCMP officer is now about $203,000 for an officer all in, so it's the most expensive officer that you can pay for in the country. And we don't have control over those costs because remember it's a federal union, and so it's the federal government who makes those decisions, which is why all of the municipalities are seeing a big increase and been trying to warn. But what that shows me is that the larger cities can actually get more police for the same amount, and they had 200 people who applied for those jobs when they went out. So there's two things I'd say. Number one, I think you'd be able to get more officers if you did stay with the regional. But number two, why wouldn't you potentially contract with the new Grande Prairie Municipal Police Force and see if they could also be able to provide that extra backup?
Not sure. I guess we're exploring all options just like you are. We are a community of just over 2,600, so we fall under this mandate of under 5,000 population. So that's all the information we have in front of us right now. So we're not really sure what options are available to us. So.
Well, I can tell you that there is one small town in southern Alberta that was just told, even though they pay $1.4 million for their policing, they're told that they're not going to have a single RCMP officer available in their detachment for the next 3 months. So I can tell you, we'd be able to do a whole lot better than that.
That's it.
So that I think is a common story in the underserviced detachments all over the province, unfortunately.
Here's one thing I know we can commit to tonight, though. Thank you for coming up to the microphone. Nolan and Ron are here, so make sure you connect with one of them. They will connect you with our Public Safety Minister, Mike Ellis, and we'll see what we can do. We'll help you out, brainstorm, see which way we can go. Thank you. Over here.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. I'm from the area. What I don't understand is why we contract police and then we don't get what we pay for. Why do we get less personnel than what we put the money out for? If we did it anywhere else, that contract would be done because it's not being met. Number two, can you imagine being in the States and getting pulled over by the FBI? I can't, but we get pulled over by our federal police service. It makes no sense at all. We should have an Alberta police. I've said it for years, and that's my comment.
Yeah.
Bruce, if I could just respond for a minute.
Yeah, of course. Your worship.
Yeah, the gentleman's point is very well taken. The fact is, whether Alberta is going to have its own provincial police force or not has already been made by Ottawa. In a white paper released in March of this year, they made it clear, apropos of the reference to the FBI, that the RCMP should be restructured into more of an elite federal police agency, and they intend to get out of the contract provincial policing by the year 2032. So fortunately for the people of Alberta, this government has been very proactive in terms of many initiatives, like the one dealing with the city of Grande Prairie here, and by expanding the Sheriff's Department. And so they're going to be ready long before the deadline. Now, one of the other problems with the RCMP is they have a chronic recruitment problem. And the figures I keep hearing is that the province contracts for 1,911 officers and seldom has anything more than about 1,400. That problem is not unique to Alberta, but exists across the country. The RCMP has a chronic problem with recruiting. And I firmly believe, and one of the other panel members might want to mention this too, that it'll be probably easier to recruit officers for a provincial or municipal-based police force.
Yep, a couple hundred already in Grande Prairie, Bruce, and I think 14 just passed in the last week. MLAs Dick and Weeb were telling us beforehand. And all this to ask those two MLAs that are here, if during this topic you think there's something we've missed, come on up, and I'll give you 45 seconds too. Let's go over here.
Premier, you're saying that rural Alberta has not got enough police in here. And I don't think that's right. Most rural Alberta is still covered by the RCMP, and we want to stay that way. If you and the federal government want to help in solving the crime rate, look at our justice system and the way it is run. It is time to do a good job. We want to boot them out if they. Why can't we elect our judges and prosecutors? Because
well,
that's where
agreed. I have a comment here. I understand your frustration.
It has never been the police who failed to do their jobs.
Yeah.
It is the justice system.
The catch and release system sure isn't
And
working.
sadly, the governments who failed to do their jobs.
Yeah.
Premier, it is time for all the government to deal with the real problem with our crime rate, and that is justice system. We have not been replacing. We don't want to replace our first-class police force.
Okay.
The RCMP have protected our province, and let's keep it that way. And get on with the real problem instead of making a new one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, if I can
Bruce,
just respond to that.
And then Premier.
And I understand your frustration, but the catch and release is a matter that the provincial government has no direct control over. That is a matter that's under the Federal Criminal Code of Canada. Now, I understand there's a pretty united front, and of course, Premier Smith can speak to this better than I can, amongst the various premiers to pressure Ottawa into tightening up the bail system, because that is the source of a lot of the problems that you've just adverted to.
Thank you for that. I just want to make sure that we know the numbers that we're dealing with, because I guess I would challenge whether 1,400 is the appropriate complement for the vast distances that we have in rural Alberta. So when you consider that Grande Prairie alone is going to have 110 officers, when you consider that Calgary has about 2,000, Edmonton has about 2,000, and then our complement of RCMP should be 911, and it's only 1,400. I would put it to you. And then we also have other police services. We've got Medicine Hat with its supports, Lethbridge, Camrose, Lacombe, Tabor, and then Indigenous forces as well. So I'm skeptical that 1,400 is enough to be able to give the coverage that we need in rural Alberta, and we can see it with the response times. I mean, perhaps you've had a good experience, but maybe some of the rural folks on the panel might want to talk about the stolen equipment. They might want to talk about having to set up their own community watches so that they can report on guys who are coming in and stealing. Like we shouldn't have to see that. So what's happening is there's a lot of band-aids that are happening because we don't have the coverage. We've even had to do the band-aid. We've had to hire more sheriffs to put hands on deck in Calgary and Edmonton to deal with the encampment issue. We had to create we have a scan team. They're shutting down drug houses. Those are sheriffs. We had to create a fugitive apprehension team to be able to get the bad guys who are out on warrants. We've caught thousands of bad guys. Those are our sheriffs. And we had to create a border control as well. We had to hire 50 officers so that we could do more border control. And so if the RCMP were focused on those high-value policing functions, we wouldn't have to backfill. So maybe it makes more sense for them to focus on those cross-border crimes, organized crime, gang-related crimes, fentanyl, human trafficking, and then we should backfill in the areas where we need local community policing. That's what we're advocating, or that's what we're getting your feedback on.
Moving towards, okay, so we do have a couple panelists I want to get to, but there's still a bunch in the line, so we've got a longer line here. We'll go over here.
Hi, Rick. I live in Grande Prairie, lived in High Level before. Policing has been a big problem. Ottawa decides which RCMP go where. I am not convinced they always pick from the top of the gene pool for some of these rural communities. Especially like Grande Prairie and Red Deer seem to be, Ottawa doesn't really like them very much. There's some wonderful police out here, don't get me wrong. Also, they send a lot of rookies here who come out here and then spend most of their time in school upgrading. They are counted as the numbers of being RCMP for here, but they are not here. The first couple of years they are absent so much, but our numbers still say we have them. The other issue is when we get policing from all over the country, people come from other provinces, they don't share our values. I think an Alberta police force, we would recruit a lot more from Alberta with similar values, and it would be a lot easier to retain them. Also for moving around, if you're here and all of a sudden you get told you're moving to New Brunswick, some might not want to do that because family is closer. I think keeping it local is a huge benefit.
Thank you. Thank you. Right here.
Hi, my name is Andrea Willman. I'm from Grande Prairie. I've been here about 20-ish years. I'm running for school board. Yay! This was a fantastic metaphor for some of the things that I'm talking about every day right now. But talking about it like that feels really controversial, and I get told often to be very careful about how I talk about it, because there could be repercussions for how I talk about it. My question is, are the school boards afraid of you, and should they be?
I'm going to try to tie that into the Alberta police force. Premier, did you threaten somebody? Look, I don't think I can tie that in actually to the Alberta police force.
The only way to do a tie-in is that we do know that. I mean, we're doing a consultation right now because we're hearing that there is danger in schools, that there's aggression in schools. That's the #1 complaint that teachers have, and we'd never put up with the kind of behavior that students are exhibiting towards their teachers. No one goes to a workplace expecting to be beat up and then have to see the person who beat them up in their workplace the next day. But we did move away from having police centered in schools. But that's one of the things that potentially a local police force could do, is that they'd be able to decide that they might want to hire a few extra officers so that they could go around to the schools in order to ensure that it's a safe environment for not only the kids but also the teachers. So that I haven't seen anyone advocating on that on the school board, but that was certainly the case when I was a kid, that we had a number of officers who were in the classroom and gave us a really good understanding of what the police did, and I think there might have been a bit more social order as a result.
Hey, MLA Tara Sawyer recently hit a lot of doors because she ran and won in the by-election in Old Stittsbury, Three Hills. So what did you hear on the policing issue in your rural community?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. To start with, before I heard it, I mean, I lived it and experienced it on our farm with the rural crime that we are faced with, let alone, 3 weeks ago had fuel stolen again. And I'll say quite frankly, at harvest is one of the times where we see an uptake between stealing our vehicles that we've left by bins or batteries from the augers, goes on. So my point before I get to what Bruce said, respectfully to the gentleman, and I'm welcome to all opinions, but there is a problem in the rural areas where we do not have enough officers, and greatly respect them. They do come and go. They try to get into our communities as best they can, but often they don't even come out on the call. We've had it where he would have liked to, but he was new and he said, "I don't know where you are." And by the time I get there, they'll be gone. I mean, I was chasing the people, so I said, well, I'm just following them. Go to Range Road and keep following. So, but my point is, we have a situation where, because of that, our communities rely on social media to warn each other. When I say it's organized crime rings, it's very scary. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir out here, understanding the level of isolation and how few and far you will be in between. Having said that, yes, on the doors, this got brought up to me all the time in the towns, and I did speak with a retired RCMP officer. He brought it up to me, saying he's quite concerned. He was a proud officer, but he discouraged his son from joining the force because it is not what it used to be, and it's not the men and the women that are the problem. And I was hit another door, and the gentleman is an active Calgary Police Force officer, and there's nothing he would love more than actually to be able to be policing in the community, because he chooses not to live in Calgary. He's raising his family in a rural community because he knows those are the best things going, and level of community you get in there you can't touch. Mm-hmm. So there is a willingness, and there's an incredible need. I mean, I could go on and on. When you talk about paying for security...
Thank you.
Well, I'm not done. For once, I'm gonna keep talking for a minute, Bruce. Because when we talk about security, everyone says, well, just put up a gate, just put up some cameras. Well, we do. That doesn't stop them. You hope that maybe you can use that if you catch them. And it's more for you to be able to monitor, to figure out who it was, right? So, and that's a cost.
I think, Tara, the person last had it wrong. It's not, school boards aren't scared of the Premier, they're scared of you.
Well, if you know when you're going to talk rural, I'm going to get passionate.
That's it. No, appreciate it. Let's get through a couple more. Over here.
Stephen from Fairview. I own a roofing company, and in August I had both my work trucks stolen. And the RCMP, to their credit, did a great job recovering them, and they did arrest somebody. When I was on the phone with the officer, he tells me that this is the third time arresting the same guy. Mm-hmm. So the answer to the question, yes, we need our own police force. I want to have a police force by Albertans, for Albertans. But what can we do about keeping these people? I know he spoke to the question a little bit, but we need to keep these people in jail. And meanwhile, I'm out $20,000 in damage tools. And what do I do about that?
Yeah, look, we couldn't agree more, but I wish we could give this gentleman and everybody else a solution. Other than what you and Minister Ellis and everybody else is doing, how do we change this?
I can tell you this, again, is not a partisan issue. If you saw what just happened in Manitoba, a man released on bail on conditions that they didn't go see his family, and he went and murdered his sister and stabbed 7 other people. That is happening all over this country, and I can tell you every single premier has been asking for over a year for us to fix the wrong turn that the Trudeau government made. So if you want to remember what happened, it was Bill C-75, and what and I'm sure the justice will correct me if I'm describing this wrong, but what the direction was that a judge couldn't just look at the crime on the face of it to determine whether that person should be released. They had to look at the foundational factors about why they became a criminal. And so they're essentially, if you had a bad childhood, if you were abused, if you were suffering from intergenerational trauma, and so on and so forth, that became one of the conditions for releasing somebody. But in releasing them, they go back to the very community that they came from and are victimizing those same community members. And so what we have been asking for is that we have to go back to the same kind of rules of court that we used to have. If they are violent, if they are dangerous, if they are repeat criminals, or some combination of all of those, you have to be able to keep them behind bars so that they don't go out and continue to reoffend. We've seen the stats that show, it's actually, it's true. It's a small number of criminals who, as you described, are just going out and reoffending. It's so demoralizing to our police force that before they finish the paperwork booking a guy, that he's back out on the streets again. And so that's also going to lead to better policing if they have some confidence that going through the effort of apprehending them is going to pay off, that they're going to see justice. I don't know if Judge McDonald has more to say on that.
Not really. You've pretty much nailed it. It
Awesome.
Really has to be a fundamental reform of the bail provisions.
Yes. Awesome. Do you know what? We've got 2 more. We're going to go to them. But for what it's worth, what drives me crazy, and I think a lot of Albertans crazy, is there are actual people in political parties that believe in defunding the police, which seems like complete madness. We'll get to these 2 over here.
Carrie, I'm from the Beaver Lodge Heights area, and I want to talk, I guess, about the judicial system, because we are being failed by that judicial system. I've worked with special needs, disabilities, FAS, all of that kind of stuff, as an advocate for them and taking them through court. I was working with a 15-year-old young man. He was up on 33 charges, theft, all of that stuff. But he was also up on 25 charges of breach of probation. So the judge heard all of his stuff, listened to his lawyer, and the judge put him out on probation again. And I'm advocating for the kid, because this is not doing that child any good either.
Yeah.
I said to the judge, what part of 25 breach of probations makes you think that probation is working for him?
Yep.
This kid already has trouble.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha. Yep. For sure. Yep. Thanks for sharing. It's exactly what we're hearing around the province. Thanks for sharing. We need to reform it federally somehow. Okay.
So if that one child is up for 25 breaches of probation is put back on probation, the RCMP have done all their work. I like our RCMP. They've done all the stuff they need to do. Maybe 25 breach of probations is too much for some RCMP members, and maybe that's why we're having trouble with recruitment.
Okay. There's one more in this line. Let's have one more comment.
So I totally support, I'm Tanya. Hi, I'm so
Hi,
glad
Tanya.
you're here. I totally support the APP with two caveats. So part of the problem with RCMP recruitment numbers is the fact that they are so regimented and so thorough in the background checks, right? So you have to have so many personal references for 20 years. You have to have all this information. So when I have 6-year-olds and I say, this is a police, he's a superhero, I honestly believe it. So if we're talking about filling all these positions, is this a quantity over quality? How are we going to find those people that share that moral compass in a society to fill those where we're kind of shrinking away from those old-timey morals? So my concern is, who's filling these positions? How do we make sure that they're here if we have to beg them to come and offer bonuses?
Yeah, the good news is I think we had a couple of hundred people apply for training here in Grande Prairie. Nolan and Ron were telling me beforehand.
And if I may, we see the same level of enthusiasm in the Lethbridge Police Service as well. I've gone to talk to the recruiting classes. There is just, when you talk, there are a couple of problems with the structure of the RCMP, and one of them is they deploy almost more like military. So that when you get recruited, you have to go where they send you. And that's why I think a lot of people here were saying that they see a lot of rookies. And then once you put a few years in, then you can go to where you really want to go. Let me put that in quotation marks. And that's part of the frustration I think people are having, is that to really get somebody who understands the community, who knows where the rural roads are, they've got to be part of the community. But I wouldn't, I mean, what we're finding with sheriffs, because now that we're elevating our sheriffs to police, we're going to have about 1,200. Half are going to be police officers and half are going to be peace officers with a pathway to become police. What we're hearing is that there are people from all the forces that want to come work for us. RCMP, Edmonton Police Service, Calgary Police Service, and others. And so there's a number of people who are all well-trained, who have spent a lot of time in policing, who might just want a different environment and be able to work in a local policing. So I feel pretty confident from what I've seen of local recruitment that we'll be able to have some success in attracting good people.
Before I ask the polling question, Stephen, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Buffalo, what happens on First Nations? This much debate and, so many choices?
Thanks, Bruce, and thanks for everyone and their input and questions tonight. I just want to share that, some of the First Nations in Southern Alberta, the biggest reserve in Canada, the Blood Tribe, they have their own police service. The Tsuut'ina Nation is right beside the city of Calgary. They also have their own service as well, and the Siksika Nation. So the initiative is there, and obviously it's about community safety, response times. We hear all of that, and we just want to make sure that our communities are also meeting the criteria to keep everyone safe, despite some of the legal challenges of the criminal code. So proof is out there, it can work, but it's really up to the nation and the human resources and the initiative to get it done. So I'm just glad to say that.
Here's the question. Should Alberta create an Alberta Police Service to take over community policing from the RCMP? Who says yay? And who says nay? The yeas have it. The next video to discuss is on constitutional changes.
Our next topic is Alberta taking a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution to empower and better protect provincial rights. The Canadian Constitution, including its Charter of Rights of Freedoms and sections on the division of powers between the federal and provincial governments, is foundational to our democracy. The enforcement of the Constitution by governments and the courts ensures our rights and freedoms are protected, and that our provincial and federal governments generally function as they should. But no document is perfect. Some things that made sense 150 years ago may no longer make sense today. That is why the Constitution contains an amending formula that permits the Constitution to be altered should enough provinces and the federal government agree to it. Over the last decades, several outdated and unfair problems with the Constitution have been identified, but no tangible progress has been made to fix them, due primarily to a lack of federal and provincial leadership. Examples of proposed constitutional reforms include the following. 1. Amending the division of powers to indicate that core areas of provincial jurisdiction, including over natural resources and health, are immune from federal legislation, and to also ensure that in shared areas of jurisdiction, such as agriculture and immigration, provincial laws prevail over federal ones. 2. Imposing constitutional limits on the federal spending power in areas of provincial jurisdiction, including a provincial right to opt out of federal spending measures with proper compensation should they so choose. 3. Adhering strictly to representation by population in the House of Commons. Right now, those living in smaller provinces are greatly overrepresented when compared to those living in larger ones. 4. Either abolishing the Senate entirely or having it actually represent provincial interests as originally intended by mandating an elected Senate with the same amount of senators representing each province. 5. Allowing provinces to appoint their own King's Bench and Court of Appeal justices, rather than having those appointments made by the federal government. 6. Expanding the Supreme Court to allow for more justices from Western Canada and making prior service on a province's Court of Appeal a mandatory requirement of becoming a Supreme Court justice. 7. Eliminating the Ottawa residency requirement for judges on federal courts to ensure more Western Canadian representation. And 8. Mandating provincial approval of the appointment of a lieutenant governor to a province by the federal government. There are, of course, many other potential constitutional amendments that are worth discussion, but this is a start. So, should Alberta take a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution in order to empower and better protect provincial rights? And if so, which of the amendments discussed or other proposals should the Alberta government advocate for?
Let's go over here.
Hello, Daryl Prue from Peace River. I would say, like others have said at previous panels, that I'm a maximalist on all of these issues we're discussing tonight, except for this one. It's quite obvious from examples from this panel and from regular Albertans that the Canadian Constitution is an absolute failure. The gentleman from Athabasca nailed it. We need Alberta independence. It's the only way. And Premier, I just want to remind you that the Alberta Firewall letter was penned January 24th, 2001. We've been talking about these issues for it'll be 25 years before we've even done anything on them. We have to stop talking about this. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, but we have to be done talking and it's time to act. With 4 seconds left, can someone tell me where Minister Lowen is? I have to ask him why he cut my white-tailed deer harvest in half this year. Thank you.
All right, Minister Lowen, you got someone coming your way. He's hiding out at the back of the room there. You'll be able to go see him over there.
He heard you were a bad shot. I don't know.
Well, I first of all, I share your impatience because one of the Firewall authors was at our Airdrie meeting the other night, Andy Crooks, and I've been watching this debate go on as long as you have, and I know that it's been consulted on many times before. Part of what I would say is that in political circles, these ideas have been talked about a lot, but in the general public, maybe not so much. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to say these are things that we're being asked to do through a political process, through political parties. Is there an appetite for us to pursue them? And if there is, we'll put them to a referendum and we'll make a decision one way or the other so that we can decide it. That's part of why we're trying to get a gauge on whether there is interest. When it comes to trying to address the Constitution, I guess the Constitution has changed over the years. Michael has a really good story about where we came from versus where we are now. But in recent years, Quebec managed to convince the House of Commons to recognize them as a distinct society. That was a constitutional change, a bilateral one, but it was one of the big ones that they tried to get passed in Meech Lake and Charlottetown. And then Nunavut, a brand new territory, got created and has just been given devolution. So it's now in control of its resources. So that's another constitutional change that has happened in recent memory. The big forums where everybody gets together and tries to do massive change, maybe that wasn't successful. because we tried it twice, and I think we're so gun-shy we haven't tried it again for 30 years. But maybe each of these ideas could be tried one at a time. It didn't work with equalization, but maybe we could get the other provinces to agree that the federal government shouldn't pass policy in our area of provincial jurisdiction without our agreement. I can tell you we have a lot of agreement around the Premier's table on that notion. Maybe we could agree on one of the unanimous ones to abolish the Senate, since we've tried so hard to reform it. Maybe it just needs to be abolished and we can perhaps start over. Maybe we could get unanimous consent on that. And so it's probably, I mean, if there isn't an appetite to have a whole-scale discussion and convention about how to change the Constitution, maybe we can identify a couple of these that are worth taking forward. But I know that there might be others who have things.
There are, but I'm going to ask them to hold off a bit because we're way behind and I'm not getting enough people in. So let's start over here.
Good evening, Madam Premier and honourable council members. Lieutenant Colonel David Redman produced a document called Canada 24, 6 National Interests. And the first one, he said, is unity, a group of people who share common ethics, beliefs, and values, national security, defend and protect our borders, good governance, integrity, and accountability, rights and freedoms, economic prosperity, so that citizens can recognize the growth, and personal societal well-being. Future generations have to feel that they are going to be better off than their previous generations. We have a federal Liberal government that has lost or misplaced or done something with tens of billions of dollars that are missing, over 80 ethics violations, and a Prime Minister with 103 conflicts of interest already. Sam Cooper reports on many accounts of fraud and laundering tied to the federal Liberals. My question is, before we get started negotiating with other criminal organizations as well, can the government of Alberta set ethics and accountability standards that the government of Alberta and other Canadian governments will be required to meet before we can carry on with constitutional negotiations?
Did you... I can't believe you got that in 45 seconds. That was that was amazing. Premier, do you want to, or could I?
Just that David Redman is he's an incredible thinker on a lot of these issues. I know that he was our emergency management agency lead in 2005, and has done some great work, and I count him as an advisor on a lot of issues. So I appreciate the comment that you've made. I don't know that I would be able to do what you have requested, that I'd be able to pass anything that would be binding on the federal Liberal caucus when it comes to ethics. But I can tell you that we do have a number of things that we put on the table to try to get them to repeal some of the bad laws that have held our province back. We haven't made enough progress yet, but I'm still hoping that within the next month or month and a half that we will, and maybe you can judge the outcome at that time. But thanks for your input on that.
Does anybody want to hear from Minister Schultz and what it's been like dealing with the federal Liberals?
Well,
you're up, Minister.
I'll try to keep it brief. It's, I tell the Premier that it has been a great honor to be in this role, but it's also been a great challenge, especially sitting across the table from Minister Guilbeault. I look at where we are tonight, and I think if everybody raised their hands, if I asked if you are in our energy industry, ag industry, forestry industry, manufacturing, that would probably almost touch every single person in this room. And what we have seen from the federal government, and so many of you have raised it tonight, it's the frustrations that I've certainly felt over the last 2.5 years, but just compounded. We have a federal government, my favorite line that the Premier ever used was that they are acting lawlessly, which they are, completely disregarding the Constitution of Canada, which I think has opened us up to have this conversation with other provinces across the country. We have, of course, now we have a new Prime Minister. I would say it's the same old party, but a different face at the top, saying that we are going to be an energy superpower, that we are going to unleash our economic potential as a country. Yet we still have in place a tanker ban off the East Coast. We have Bill C-69, which the courts called unconstitutional. My former counterpart, Stephen Guilbeault, when I raised that with him, he said, "Oh, that's just an opinion." Just an opinion of the Supreme Court of Canada. You know, former Justice McDonald beside me, you know, that is such an affront to the institutions of our country. We have an emissions cap, which is a production cap, which is absolutely infringing on an area of provincial jurisdiction, that is the development of our resources, including energy. This would cost tens of thousands of jobs, not just here in Alberta, but across the country. And I think right now, what we do see, demand is rising for energy, for safe, affordable, reliable, responsibly produced energy. It has become an issue of national security for us across the country, and they want to cap that. No other company would put a cap on their resources like that. We have the net zero power grid. That would cost us $1.7 trillion. It would leave us, I can tell you, I was in Grande Prairie, not the last time I was here, 2 times ago, in January. My plane did not leave. The hospitality was lovely, but the weather was frosty, and we need natural gas to keep us warm in Canada. That doesn't make any sense. That puts us at a very real physical risk. We have methane regulations. I think when you were talking about ice cream, all I could think of was cattle, Bruce. They started with energy, and then they targeted ag. We see this. We saw it with fertilizer. We are here to power and feed the world, and it is so exceptionally frustrating when we have another level of government trying to limit our resources and then tell us what to do. To take our, I also put in an op-ed, we are tired of being the ATM of Canada. And so what I often tell people at these town halls that we're going to is just how grateful I am that we have the Premier we do right now, who, first of all, I think values this direct democracy. I don't think any other leader across the country or really around the world would put this much time and effort into hearing from the people that we have been elected to represent, and then take that and then fight for us by building a coalition across the country on things where we think we can get agree with and see some change. Because after 10 years, I can tell you, all of us as panelists have heard 10 years of this federal government. There's a lot of frustration out there right now.
You get to follow Minister Schultz tonight. Go ahead.
First of all, I'm Steve Reeves. I'm from Valley View.
Steve.
I'm a contractor in oil field. I'm very pleased with Danielle Smith and the efforts that she's been making to try to negotiate better deals with our federal government. But my question is, the federal government likes the position they're in. They get elected by the people of the East. We really don't have a say in that. What kind of a hammer do you intend to use to get them to negotiate?
Hey, Premier, can I turn this into a question for Michael Binion? So, because we haven't heard from you on this one, and I know you're doing some work in this area.
Yeah, so I think I've spent a lot of time in Quebec. I've been there probably 30 years to make a discovery and then not be allowed to produce it. I've spent a lot of time studying the culture there, and they have so successfully asserted themselves in the country. From 1840, when Lord Durham put his report out that we had to assimilate Quebec, they have been able to use the Canadian political system to assert themselves successfully since then, to protect their language, culture, take up all the possible room there is in the Constitution, plus more. And in the numbers, they have fewer numbers than us. The last election, Saskatchewan and Alberta sent 46 Conservatives to Ottawa. Quebec sent 44 Liberals. They're not outvoting us. They're just outperforming us in the federal game, or the politics of the federal game. And I'll just to keep it a bit shorter to get to, the point. First of all, Canada became independent of Great Britain through a process called responsible government, which is to say that, as Lord Durham put it out, that as people demonstrate the ability to responsibly govern themselves, then power should devolve closer to the people governed. This constitutional principle is alive and well today. It was a foundation of the Clarity Reference Act that said Quebec can secede under the exact same principles of responsible government on a democratic, responsible government. Alberta could do the same thing, but we have not asserted ourselves. And I have to tell you, I think the one young lady asking, how do we get people to look at us differently? I'm so tired of going down to Ottawa, or to Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec, and they mock Alberta when I talk about how we're going to stand up for themselves. What's even worse, they mock me. And I hate that. When I say we're going to stand up for ourselves. And so what I really think is before we give up on a constitution, which might be the only one in the world that actually has a process for you to, through responsible self-government, gain more autonomy, potentially even full independence, just like Canada did from Britain. It's probably the only constitution in the world that allows that under the rule of law and under the constitutional principles. Before we give up on that, let's give this self-government thing a try. Let's have our own police. Let's manage our own money. Let's be proactive about trade. Let's co-manage immigration. Let's collect our own taxes. Let's do everything Quebec has done to assert its interests before we give up on this constitution.
Thanks, Michael. I just want to tell you I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. One more over here.
Firstly, my name is Peter. I've been here for 30 years. Firstly, I agree that the government of Alberta should proceed with all of the issues on the table here tonight. I agree with all of them. Secondly, I appreciate that you're trying to get a better deal from Ottawa, and you're doing a lot. That's great. But any rational person with a cursory view of history knows that Ottawa is not going to give us anything meaningful or lasting. They might give us an inch in regards to the 9 non-negotiables that you stated to Carney, but we are demanding a mile. You need to draw a very definitive line in the sand immediately as far as when is his last day to comply. Otherwise, you'll be seen as having bark and no bite, and you'll be done politically. And I really want you to stick around. There are many more systematic problems in this country than just those 9 items, and the only way to deal with most of them is to become an independent country and take as many other Western provinces with us as possible. The West wants out.
You too just got in under that 45 just by the hair on your chinny chin chin. Premier, would you close this one for us?
Well, I'll tell you where I started. So my starting point was that I wanted to see some changes in legislation by the time they came back into session. So they've come back into session just as of yesterday, just as of earlier this week, September 15th. The Prime Minister and I have had a really good meeting of the minds on a lot of the things that I've put on the table. Not all of them, not yet, but we're kind of 80% in agreement, which is better than it was with the previous guy. But you've probably heard him say that he wants to have a second announcement on major projects by Grey Cup. So that's kind of my line in the sand, because I have told him that I believe that Justin Trudeau created the separatist uprising in Alberta, and the only way it's going to be addressed is if he undoes a lot of the terrible policies that happened under the Trudeau Liberals. And so I've been pretty clear about that, and I would say that if he doesn't, then there is already one referendum petition out there that is gaining signatures. The other referendum petition has to go before the court to get affirmed, and I gather that's happening in November. And if there isn't movement, then there is a mechanism that I believe different groups have decided to take on to try to put it to the people. And so I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm hoping that I'm able to convince Albertans that we have made enough progress with Canada that Canada can work and we can have a new relationship. But it does require that Prime Minister Carney makes some serious actions. We have to get a bitumen pipeline. We have to get rid of the 9 bad laws. We have to restore our business investment climate. And as you mentioned, that's my short list. So there's a lot more things on that list. But that would be a good demonstration that we're undoing a lot of the damage that's been done to this province over the last 10 years. And November 16th is the date of the Grey Cup. So that's the new line.
We hear you. Should Alberta take a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution to empower and better protect provincial rights? Who says yay? And who says nay? The yeas have it. Okay, the next video, we've got a couple left, and then another open discussion is on immigration reform.
Our next topic is Alberta taking more control of the immigration system to counter Ottawa's open border policies, which are driving up the cost of living and are not aligned with the needs of Alberta's economy. In just over 100 years, Alberta's population has grown from a few 100,000 farmers, ranchers, and First Nations peoples to a province of over 5 million, with one of the most prosperous economies in the world. This great success story would not have been possible without new Albertans moving here from all over the world. That is why Alberta has always welcomed newcomers looking to contribute to our province's economic success and unique culture. And we always will. However, as all Canadians intuitively understand, the number of newcomers entering the country each year needs to be sustainable, and everyone wanting to come should be committed to upholding the Canadian values of hard work, love of freedom, and peaceful coexistence. Sadly, Justin Trudeau's Liberals upended Canada's immigration system for over a decade by instituting an open borders policy that permitted millions to enter Canada each year, often without any sort of proper vetting, job prospects, or needed employment skills. The results have been disastrous. Housing prices have skyrocketed. Unemployment keeps increasing as immigration outpaces job growth. And sadly, many of the divisions and disputes that plague other countries have begun making their way into ours. Further, Ottawa has ignored the request of Alberta to cut refugee claimants and student visas, and instead permit Alberta, like Quebec, to select a more sustainable and targeted number of economic migrants better able to contribute to our province's economy. What can Alberta do about the situation? Quite a bit, actually. You see, under the Constitution, immigration is a shared area of responsibility between the federal and provincial governments, which makes sense. Essentially, the federal government gets to decide who they let into Canada, but it's up to the provinces to provide the vast majority of the social programs that newcomers need. So obviously, we should have a say about who is coming here. If Alberta isn't satisfied with the number or economic qualifications of newcomers moving to our province, we may have the option to withhold provincial social programs to any non-citizen or non-permanent resident who does not have an Alberta-approved immigration status. This would likely encourage more sustainable numbers of immigration overall, while supporting the entry of newcomers that can contribute to our provincial economy. If Alberta went this direction, Ottawa could decide to fight Alberta on this issue in the courts, and there would be some additional costs in taking a more hands-on approach to immigration. However, much, if not all of that cost, could be offset in corresponding savings to our social programs. So, should Alberta take more control of the immigration system in this way, or continue with the status quo? And how can our province convince Ottawa to act more responsibly with their immigration policies in the future?
We have a few first-generation Canadians on the panel, and I'm going to ask one of them to kick us off. I'm going to ask Dr. Benny Zhu to tell us a little bit about his story, and just be frank, has it changed since you arrived? If so, how?
Thanks, Bruce. Immigration system changed a lot since I came here 33 years ago. So I come from a traditional Chinese medicine family. So, we are very thankful to Canada. We found a place to call home, and we're still grateful today. So back then, acupuncture was almost unheard of. So, and today it's regulated health profession under the Health Professions Act. Back then was more like the immigration system was more like a partnership of friendship. There's tons of government programs helping us to gain skills and confidence so we can contribute back to the community. So today we still have a lot of federal and provincial and even self-initiated community programs to help immigrants. However, the gap is huge. We got newcomers cannot find jobs for whatever reason, and we got employers cannot find employees for whatever reason. So there's huge disconnect between who's coming here and what we want, what we need. So I think immigration system is a big question mark created by the federal government over the last few years. So maybe we need a smarter system So, we can benefit newcomers, and the newcomers can be and the province can be benefited.
Seems reasonable. Sir, you start us tonight on this one.
Hi, my name is Lyndon Barr. I've lived in Grande Prairie for most of my life. I work in oil and gas, and I'm also an immigrant. I was born in Germany. My father, who was up until recently a U.S. citizen, I am an immigrant, child of an immigrant. Apologize for my nervousness here. I'm deeply troubled and appalled by the current provincial government's rhetoric around vilifying and scapegoating immigrants and the immigration process, especially considering the idea of stripping certain groups of foreign workers of basic social services. I work alongside immigrants, and they are overall hard workers and large contributors to their communities. So my question is, why are immigrants and immigration constantly in provincial crosshairs?
I think it's because of the numbers, Lyndon, but I'll let the Premier speak to it. Things have changed greatly in the last 10 years. Premier, can you give us some context to why Canada has changed so much?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think immigration was at all controversial prior to COVID. And part of it was that the policy was very different. And it didn't matter if it was a Conservative government or a Liberal government. So from the 10 years between 2009 and 2019, the average percentage of newcomers coming to Canada was about 0.6%. So about 300,000 people. Last year it was 1.8 million. And so that's part of the reason for the tension. When you bring in 5 to 6 times as many people as you normally bring in, you have a real problem in being able to absorb that population into the workforce, into our schools. You have trouble getting doctors, you have trouble getting rent, you have trouble getting affordable housing. Those are all the pressures that we're seeing, and it really just emerged after COVID. It may be that the government thought because people weren't coming here during those 2 years where no one was moving around, that they wanted to catch up. But the real problem is that they have increased all of the other programs and decreased the economic migrants. So they've increased international students, increased asylum seekers, increased family reunification, and they cut the number of permanent residents that we could nominate from 10,000 down to 4,800. So they've gone in the opposite direction. They also took an approach with temporary foreign workers, which I think kind of veered them off on the wrong path. Temporary foreign workers were always meant to either be for seasonal and agriculture workers or for higher skilled workers. It was never meant to fill jobs at McDonald's and greenhouses and A&W. And so as a result, we're now seeing a major youth unemployment crisis. And this is very different than we had ever seen before. Normally, when our economy is doing well, the youth unemployment goes down to about 10 or 11%. It's at 17%. And so every time we come to a forum like this, someone will come up and tell me about a kid or a grandkid who has applied for dozens of jobs and not even got a call back. So that's what we're trying to figure out, is what's the balance. And I'll tell you what I think the balance is for Alberta. I think 1% of the population, which would be high by historical standards, that'd be about 50,000 people coming in a year. And I think we should choose about 55% or more of those as economic migrants, the same way that Quebec chooses, and then have a smaller number of international students, family reunification, and asylum seekers. That I think our economy would be able to support. But instead, we've had 150,000 people coming here year after year for the past 3 years. And it's putting pressure on every social service. So we've got to find the right level. That's what it's about. It's not about no immigration. It's about finding the right level of immigration and making sure that we're giving the priority for those like you who have a job to come to and want to be a taxpayer first.
It's tough to add to that, but there's one point when you said the government's talking down to immigrants. By talking about the discussion, nobody's talking down to immigrants. We're talking down to a federal government who has lost complete control of the system and are trying to fix it. Over here.
I'm Rick from Grande Prairie again. You covered one of my points there, Daniel. Thank you. I hired a 16-year-old kid just before school started. I just needed help for a few days. I'm self-employed in construction. And I asked him, why did you sit at home all summer? Why didn't you go to work? And he said, I applied at 53 places. I didn't get an interview because the government has programs for immigrants where they pay partial wages, so they won't hire. He said, none of my friends have jobs. So if we are doing that, and taking the work away from our young kids, we are creating a huge problem for the future.
Yeah.
I am very in favor of immigration if we can do it at a sustainable rate where they don't take the housing from our seniors and don't take the jobs from our kids, and where we do it in a way that they integrate into our society. If we put too many into one place, they will not integrate. Thank you.
I'm not allowed to talk about things that are off topic, but I might just say that we did just roll out a youth employment incentive last week. We're subsidizing businesses who will give kids a chance, age 15 to 24, $10 per hour to get them those jobs. And so if anyone in the room is an employer, just know if you hire a kid under the age of 18, it would be $3 an hour. And if you hire a kid over 18, it'd be $5 an hour. We just think that you need to give kids a chance. I know we have issues with the work effort, maybe not showing up on time, maybe they like to have the weekends off to go camping, but we really need to rely on our business community to help train kids in those really vital job skills, because if they don't get their first job, they won't get their second job, and they won't get their third job. So we're trying to balance that out. So thanks so much for your comments on that.
Thank you. Over here, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Tina. Thank you for coming to Grande Prairie. There was a gentleman at the next panel in Airdrie that took the words out of my mouth. His name is John Williams, and he said that newcomers should contribute to our social programs for at least 5 years before becoming eligible for benefits. I agree with him. We also need to focus public resources on matters that directly affect Albertans and Canadians rather than funding or policing international demonstrations and protests. Alberta's youth deserve priority in our job market, so it's time to review and phase out the temporary foreign worker program, which often displaces local talent. Finally, anyone who commits serious crimes while here should face firm, consistent consequences, including deportation when appropriate. Our goal must be Bruce, can I please just have 5 more seconds? 5 more seconds. Our goal must be a fair system that balances opportunity for newcomers with strong support for Albertans.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
I don't know how much John paid you to mention his name.
It's his birthday tomorrow.
Happy birthday, John.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I have 2 grandchildren in college, and when they try to get a job, they were denied because they were white, they were dark, and they were not LGBTQ. Help us out. How do these kids get jobs if they are going to college?
Well, I would phrase this question like this, Premier. DEI ran off the rails, and you've asked your ministers to fix that. Do you want to touch on it?
Well, you'll see a little bit more coming in the fall, but we certainly don't think that the kind of mandatory training in ideological subjects should be a requirement in universities and shouldn't be a requirement in our professional colleges. We're calling it the Peterson Law, the Jordan Peterson Law, because he had retraining because of because he had some mean tweets against Trudeau, but I think that's what a lot of young people are running up against, is that they feel like they have to hide their own views to be able to get the grades in school. I've heard of kids who feel that they have to write papers from a certain perspective in order to get higher marks, and it shouldn't be that way, because that makes a big difference in being able to get the referrals that you need to be able to get those first jobs as well. So we know that there's a linkage there, but I still think at the baseline, when I look at my own history, I started off babysitting my kids, or my siblings, and then someone down the street knew that I was a babysitter, so I started babysitting for them, and then they gave me a reference so I could work at the bingo hall, and then they gave me a reference so I could work at McDonald's, and then they gave me a reference so I could work at a Cannery Row seafood restaurant, and then I was off to the races in getting into university. And so I bet every single one of us has a story of what our first job was. Imagine being in your 20s and not having a first story of your first job. Imagine just how much you've missed out on in the things that you need to learn. And so that's why we really think it's very, very important to send that message. Let's get these young people attached to a first job. They'll learn some things, they'll learn some skills that will be able to help them as they get into college and beyond.
Hey, Dr. Aiken, what was your first job? You're a medical doctor now, working out olds. Tell us a bit about your story and when you arrived in Canada.
My story, my name is Dr. Akino Sequad. I'm a family doc. I currently work out of Didsbury. And I moved out from England about 12 years ago to Alberta. And what attracted me was energy security, food security. I could get a job, I could buy a house. And it's been an amazing experience. And I think that's what the opportunity that Alberta offers. It's that unique opportunity that works for people that want to contribute and a system that is welcoming. And I think, Alberta, hand on my heart, is one of the best places to live. People are kind, they are generous, they are wonderful. But I think the generosity has been taken for granted. I think we had the envy of the world immigration system that valued people that wanted to contribute. That was a merit-based system. Everybody wanted to replicate what we were doing. And then 2020 came, and there's this open border, unvetted, unregulated, uncontrolled immigration system, not looking at what the resources are, what the provinces had to be able to look after those numbers. And this huge surge in population that is impacting housing, healthcare, education, social services. And my thought is that I think we need to go back to what used to be, which is a regulated immigration system. Our Premier mentioned the fact that Section 95 of our Constitution talks about immigration, that actually the provinces should take the lead on immigration, and only from time to time should the federal government be getting involved. I think it's time to kick out federal government from immigration. We need Alberta. We need the provinces determining the numbers, the scale, the type of immigration, not Ottawa determining that, because we need to protect our young individuals, our young people that are struggling to get ahead, struggling to get their first jobs. My first job, where I worked in a care agency, looking after elderly people, and I'm proud of it. That was what started me on my career to becoming a doctor. And we need to give that opportunity so that we don't rob future generations of Albertans from that opportunity to get their first job. And particularly as a male, it's affecting young men. Those are our brothers, those are our sons, those are our future dads. They need those opportunities to get into the workplace and develop those life skills. Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'm Barry from Peace River. A lot of what I was going to say has already been said or mentioned in the video. I do know a lot of immigrants who worked hard to get here and to get to where they are, and they disagree with the way the federal government are letting immigrants in now. They want them out. I myself have 3 sons, 25 and under, who cannot get a job that can support themselves or minimum wage part-time jobs, just trying to make a living at home, paying no bills. They can't get a full-time job because there's too many immigrants. Hospitals are full, schools are full, rentals are full, we're full. It's time to act now.
Yeah. Well, I will point out as we go to the other microphone that we've had people say at some of the other town halls, 1.8 million is the number that's reported. Some question whether that is the actual number. I guess there's no way to determine that, but it's reality, I think. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, my name's Shauna Larondel. I've been here for years, living here. I own a company, Stuckey's Upholstery, which I have taken advantage of many of these hiring Indigenous people. I have hired foreign workers for 25 years, or maybe even more, so I know the system. I have no problem with immigrants coming in here that want to contribute, that want to pay taxes, that want to come into the culture that we have, our ethics and morals. If we let them in, because I also travel to other countries, there is no way when I travel to these other countries would they ever allow me to come and take a job over one of their people that live in that country. And I think that we need to understand and provide the jobs for our people here first, and that's what I'm told when I apply for a worker. And the only reason why I do apply for one is because the skill that I need, I don't see here. So I would love to take advantage of the new program that you're talking about, and I will look into that, definitely. Yep. Also inviting the Indigenous people in, because they're very creative with their hands. and anybody that wants to contribute to come and work and make a nice life. And my people have. I've helped them.
Okay.
They have come. So
Got
we
it.
need to look at what other countries are doing also
Thank
and
you.
keep immigration out that just want to come and take.
Thank
we
you.
have to contribute.
Thank you.
Since she wants to try to look into that program, for any other employers, it's being administered through Careers Next Generation. They've done a tremendous job in assisting in getting kids attached to meaningful careers in the skilled trades. So if you want to know how to get connected into that program, Careers Next Generation is the easiest way to look it up.
Go ahead, sir.
Hello, Premier. I'm glad that you are here. My first comment is a little bit off the rails, but you have bigger balls than most men.
You might want to be careful saying that this day and age, but...
I think she is fairly secure in her identity.
Touché.
Now, my comments toward this problem, and I'm almost out of time because of my comment.
No, you can keep going, sir.
Anyway, I just turned 65, so I have a little bit of interest in the old age security and kind of the pension plan. But I'm also third generation farmer rancher from this area living on the same land. My knowledge of agriculture predates the combine.
Mm-hmm.
As a youngster, I shoveled grain in the granary to keep it away from the spout coming from the thrashing machine that was driven by a Farmall M tractor. The team and wagon troops that we had developed from foreign workers at the time, indigenous workers at the time, and local labor would bring the harvest in. I grew up with a great respect of our First Nations people, and I must claim that I have a hard time not calling them Indians because that's what they proclaim themselves as.
I need to speed you up now.
And hey, I've been around a while, so...
I'm growing a beard.
But anyways, my comment at the root of this is all of those people that I grew up with, that I worshipped with, that I celebrated with, all the foreigners and the indigenous had one dream: to be Canadian. They left their strife and their political woes behind with the dream of coming to a promised land.
Amen.
And in today's immigration, we have far too much entitlement.
Yes.
To be Canadian without the virtue of wanting to be Canadian.
I think that was worth giving you 15 minutes. Can I just say, Premier, I probably shouldn't, but I agree with this man. Go ahead.
You know, Samita might want to comment too, because she's the chair of our Council of Multiculturalism. And you know what? They insisted that we start every meeting singing "O Canada," and everybody comes from a very different background. And we have other cultural councils that feel exactly the same way. Those who are on our council giving us advice believe that they can honor their own traditions, but they came here to be Canadian and they came here to be Albertan. Did you want to comment on that, Samita?
Sure, Premier. Thank you. As the chair of the Premier's Council for Multiculturalism, we hear from my members and we keep telling them, people who come in for economic advantage, economic development, a better life, need to first also integrate into the Canadian environment, the Canadian society, keep their values, because we don't ask them to leave those away, but also adapt what this environment has to offer. And I think integration is the first step that every immigrant needs to follow. So that's my take. Bruce, is it my turn to sort of talk about the other stuff?
Sumita, nobody listens to me anyway, so just carry on.
I've been making some notes through all the 9 or 10 town halls I've been attending, and I'd like to share those notes. So, Bruce, you have to be a little bit patient with me today, okay?
Do I have a choice?
Well, he doesn't. So, my take on this is actually not immigration so much, but it's a call for balance in Alberta's future. When my family and I came to Alberta many years ago, we were welcomed with opportunities that allowed us to build a better life. Somewhat had created a job I could take. That job helped us find stability, support our family, and contribute to the economy. We were also able to find affordable housing, which helped us settle and put down roots. That experience wasn't just about me or my family. It's a story shared by many immigrants who come here with hope and worked hard to build a future. We are not separate from Alberta. We are Alberta. Immigrants are a key part of the fabric of this province, contributing skills, businesses, culture, and community. This is not about us and them, or about pointing fingers at new arrivals. This is about all of us, together taking a hard look at what's changed. Over time, I've seen a growing imbalance. On one side, there are immigrants who come to create jobs, entrepreneurs, investors, small business owners. On the other side, there are many more who come seeking jobs, but the opportunities haven't kept pace with the demand. That imbalance is now putting pressure on our economy, our housing market, and our social services. We must ask ourselves, will our children and grandchildren have the same opportunities we had? Right now, the answer is not clear. And that should concern all of us. Yes. I believe it's time to have an honest conversation, not to close doors, but to put thoughtful checks and balances in place, both on international immigration and interprovincial migration. We need policies that reflect Alberta's real capacity to create enough jobs, build enough homes, and offer a future that's fair and sustainable to everyone. This isn't about shutting people. This isn't about shutting people, I repeat. It's all about making sure that when people come, we have the right systems in place and to support them and to support those who are already here. Let's work together towards a future where opportunity is something we can pass on just as it was passed on to us. Thank you.
I'm not going to get to you, but I'm going to ask you to come back at the end because we're going to do this again. We're going to open it up for those that didn't get to the mic. So here's the question. Should Alberta take more control of the immigration system to counter Ottawa's open border policies? Who says yes? Who says no? The final video that we're going to watch is on provincial tax collection.
Our next topic is the option of Alberta collecting all provincial personal income taxes, rather than having Ottawa do it for us. Today, when Albertans file and pay their personal income taxes, they do so through the Canada Revenue Agency, which then remits the provincial portion of those personal income taxes back to the provincial government. However, Alberta businesses file and pay their provincial corporate taxes directly to the provincial government. Quebec does it differently. They collect both personal and corporate income taxes directly from Quebecers, bypassing the CRA altogether. What if Alberta did the same? There would definitely be startup and ongoing administration costs, but it would also mean bringing good-paying jobs to Alberta instead of funding federal employees in other parts of the country. Under Canada's Constitution, levying and collecting taxes is an area of provincial jurisdiction, and Alberta could transition over the coming years to collecting our personal income taxes, as we do with corporate taxes now. So what are some of the benefits to Alberta collecting its own personal income taxes? 1. Better provincial tax policy. Currently, Alberta sets its own tax rates and credits, but definitions and treatments of income are still largely tied to federal rules, which limits our flexibility to implement more effective and competitive tax policy. We saw this recently when the federal government changed the rules on capital gains for doctors and other professionals, and Alberta was effectively forced to follow those same rules as it related to provincial personal income taxes. If Alberta were to collect its own taxes, we could tailor our entire tax framework to better reflect our economic realities and provincial policy goals, while declining federal changes to certain portions of tax policies that detrimentally affect provincial income tax policy. This could open the door to streamlining calculations and simplifying provincial income taxes for Alberta residents. 2. Jobs and economic opportunity at home. Collecting our own taxes would also mean establishing the infrastructure and staffing to support it, creating thousands of good, high-paying jobs right here in Alberta, instead of funding positions in Ottawa or other provinces. 3. More Alberta, less Ottawa. By moving away from the federal administration of the CRA and collecting provincial income taxes by ourselves, Alberta can exercise more direct control over a core aspect of self-government, thereby increasing our provincial independence from Ottawa. But there are also potential drawbacks to consider. 1. A long-term commitment. Establishing Alberta's own personal income tax collection agency would not happen overnight. Estimates suggest it could take up to 5 years to fully build out the necessary systems and staffing. This would be a major logistical undertaking that would require a sustained commitment from Albertans and their government. 2. Significant financial investment. The estimated cost to implement Alberta's own tax agency ranges from $750 million to $1.5 billion over several years. Once operational, the system could cost up to $750 million annually and require hiring as many as 5,000 new public employees. These are substantial expenses that must be weighed against the benefits. 3. Potential for added complexity. There are also practical implications for taxpayers and businesses. Albertans would need to file separate federal and provincial tax forms, although online filing would likely ease that burden. There may also be increased complexities for businesses and Albertans working in different provinces throughout the year. Now, tell us what you think about the idea of Alberta collecting its own personal income taxes.
Okay, whether it's this topic or one of the others that you didn't quite get to the mic on because the moderator did not keep things on time, come up now and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. How about that? And you go ahead, sir. Kick us off.
Hello, my name is Eric Gabori. I am born in Alberta. My family has been here since pre-Dominion. My parents emigrated to Alberta from Quebec. And I'm going to quote Dr. Michael Savage, you don't have a country without borders, language, and culture. And we're losing our culture because of the immigration policies that are in place. And the one thing that lacks in this is accountability, and the federal government relying on NGOs to run their departments. We should have a moratorium on immigration other than skilled workers that we need, especially when the federal government uses the Open Societies Foundation to run their immigration department and are now under investigation for RICO charges.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments. Over here.
So for the last 2 hours, we sat here and we talked and listened about how we feel the Canadian government is doing our province wrong, and I 100% agree that they are. I guess my question is, and it's for Danielle, on Grey Cup, when Trojan Horse Carney does the Lucy from Charlie Brown and pulls the football away, do you got my back?
Hey, before you answer that question, Premier, thank you. we were talking in the back beforehand about the Prime Minister. I'm not going to overshare, I promise, don't get nervous. But we were talking about this, and Stephen Buffalo beside me said, I feel like he's going to do the Lucy to Charlie Brown on us. He did. And I said, you should use that tonight. And somebody else did. So, Premier, he's got a good point.
Well,
people are nervous.
What do you think a win looks like? I mean, I guess I framed the win as them either revising or repealing the 9 bad laws, getting us a bitumen pipeline to the West Coast, and supporting the Pathways project, because Pathways has been advocating that project for a number of years. That's to reduce carbon emissions, because that matters to a lot of the customers in Europe and Asia. If we can get those 3 things, then I don't think that that's a Lucy move.
I 100% agree. I agree with all the things we're talking about today. Fortune favors the brave. Keep that in mind. But again, we are a positive net contributor to everything financially Canada, and we have about this much say.
Yeah.
You've got all the faith in the world that the provinces are going to back you and do stuff like this.
Yeah.
I've lived a long life. I've lived with Liberal government most of my life. I've lived with the other provinces most of my life, and they don't change. They've been doing the same thing to Alberta.
Yeah.
The farmers that came here and settled in 1905, the first thing they started to do is screwing them over. They had to bring their equipment from Eastern Canada so that they tariffed the U.S. equipment, even though it cost them more money. They had to put it on a train that came out of the east to send the profitability back. This is all in Alberta in the 21st century by Ted Byfield. It's a great read. Read every edition, and it shows you how this Confederation has treated Alberta since the very beginning. Why would I think...
It's going on 3 minutes, so we kind of got to wrap it up. Hey, gotcha, man. Very passionate. Like, nobody is arguing with you. We agree. We're just giving it our best shot here for the last time, and we'll hopefully get some results. Let's go to this one.
Hi there. My name is Paul. I live in Grande Prairie here. My question to the panel is... we're talking referendums on separation and everything else, and we're battling it out with Ottawa. Is there any danger of becoming the 51st state? And what's your side?
Well, I've said that. I mean, remember, we weren't treated very well by the United States a few years ago when Joe Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline within minutes of getting elected, and I don't know. I don't know what would happen if there was President Gavin Newsom or one of the other Democrat contenders. I just don't think that Alberta benefits from trading off an Ottawa that doesn't listen for a Washington that doesn't listen, and so I'm not enthusiastic about that as an option. They can be our friends, but I don't want to move in together.
I want to throw it over to Agriculture and MLA Glenn Van Dyken. Glenn, I don't think I could harrow the ground you've plowed in agriculture. What do you make of what we've chatted about tonight?
Boy, we've heard a lot tonight, Bruce. I think we started out with equalization and one individual coming to the mic quite happily to share with the rest of Canada, which is a good way forward for her. We also came with an individual that decides that or has the policy with regards to increased taxation to lower our equalization transfers, which to me is one bad policy chasing another bad policy, which just tells me that equalization is a bad policy to begin with. Another individual wondering what the hammer is, and I do believe the hammer is money at the end of the day. The federal government has a huge dilemma on their hands. We have a productivity problem within our country, and they have a spending problem. They need to create wealth somehow, and they will come to their senses sooner or later that wealth is generated with the resources that are available in this country. My first job. That's what we talked about. My first job. I was a chicken catcher. My first job was a chicken catcher. But truly, my first job into the workforce was a farm equipment dealer. Took me on as an apprentice at 16 years old in the parts department, and that led me to all the next stages. So, but seriously, with regards to Alberta sovereignty within a united Canada, I think what Michael Binion has talked about with regards to responsible self-government, the model that's before us with Quebec, a nation within a nation, I think it is definitely worth moving down these roads. The discussions we've had tonight are essentially about opportunities that are available to us as Albertans within the current Constitution, the Alberta Police Force, the pension plan. All of these things are available to us under the current Constitution. And I believe in Alberta, I believe in Albertans, and I believe that we can get this done. And a nation within a nation is an answer to a lot of the concerns that we have going forward. So that's kind of my wrap on it, Bruce, but it looks like we're in a good position in Alberta to lead the country again.
You're here. I always leave the best till last. MLA Lunty, what was your first job?
I don't know about that, Bruce. I worked at the Seniors Lodge in my hometown, so that was a great experience doing that. It's been a great experience joining you all tonight and to be part of this panel. It's been amazing traveling in Alberta. I will say a lot of this comes down to me is generational wealth. Like, this is what we're talking about, folks. Alberta's so strong. We work hard. We care for each other. And it's so frustrating because ideally we would have a federal government who partnered with us. We could probably live with the federal government who just got out of our way. But for 10 years, we have had a federal government actively working against us. And that is insane to say about in this country of Canada. The numbers are there, $1 trillion of investment that has gone away, $55 billion a year in the royalty revenue for those pipelines that weren't built. So that's why we're here. We're here to have the conversations with you. How do we bring that to life? And when we bring it to life, like I mentioned, we can set Alberta up for an entire generation or more. And that's why these conversations are so important. And thank you so much to contributing and to joining us. And we really appreciate getting to hear from all of you.
You bet. You bet. And the only thing I would raise about your comments, Brandon, is those of us that are way older would say it's been way more than 10 years that we've been putting up with these guys, for sure. I know you agree with that, but thinking back to the NEP, let's get to as many microphones as we can back and forth here. Go ahead.
My name is Attila Siska, and I'm from Grande Prairie. And I just have a statement to tell you guys that I appreciate every one of you up here fighting for us and taking this initiative and trying to get the change. I understand what the goal is here is to get the control back to Alberta. I just ask that if this doesn't go our way, because it's going to be a fight, I don't see why Canada would want to give up the golden goose that Alberta is, that we have a plan B.
Yep.
And then secondly, my question is on immigration. Have we ever considered propping up the value of young families, getting married, having kids, building our own generations here instead of relying on immigrants, provide...
Can I make a suggestion, Premier? Would you mind taking down some of these questions so that we can roll through these?
Yeah, why don't we just see how many we can get to? I'll take notes. You got it.
You got it. Okay, let's go over here. And by the way, if you've been to a mic, I'm going to ask you to go to the back of the line so that the people that haven't been to the mic can come up first, okay? Over here.
Great, thank you, Charles Backman. I came here many years ago for 2 years, and I stayed. I came from BC. My question deals with the first question that you folks posed, dealing with transfer payments. GST wasn't brought up. Many years ago, it was introduced at 7%. When Harper was in Ottawa, he reduced it down to 5%. With the increasing deficits in the Liberal government, the question is, they're going to have to look after a cash grab. What can you folks do to reduce the amount of increase that's going to be applied to everybody? And then second of all, how can you go about getting Alberta's share of that extra revenue that's going to go to Ottawa coming back. We're a wealthy province. We're going to be sending a lot of money out there. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Already are. You bet. Over here.
So my name is Samantha Stanky. I'm from Valley View, Alberta as well, home of Minister Todd Lowen. Maybe why I got a moose tag this year. Daryl, check us out. I just want to make a comment on the last video. So it's a great start, and I'm so thankful for the government and for everything that you're doing in this. I want to draw a couple comparisons. Federal jurisdiction says that they control things like fisheries and currency. We have a very capable minister here who deals with fisheries. We don't need them to tell us, so we shouldn't pay them for that service. So I think we should actually just collect everything. We will decide what the federal government gets back from us. It's time to start giving them the crumb that they deserve, and we will decide.
No argument. Samantha, thanks. Over here.
Hi, my name is Chris. I live in Grande Prairie for going on 20 years. I moved out here from the east 20 years ago with a dream of buying a pickup truck, and now I've stayed for 20 years and have a house and 2 pickup trucks and kids and a wife.
Hey, Chris, what's her name? What's her name that kept you?
She's right here, actually. Her name's Courtney. But I just want to say thank you for everything you're doing. I think there couldn't be anybody better representing our province. And as the gentleman said over there before, your balls are pretty big and they match Mr. Klein's, and thank you for that. But my question to you is, Mr. Carney has pushed deadlines and pushed them, and originally it felt like you set that gray line in the sand for him when you gave him the conditions. The other day when he came back and announced the list of projects and we weren't on one,
yeah,
it just felt like another push to a later date.
Yeah.
And again, back to the other person's question, when that date rolls around and it's all just smoke and mirrors and he gives us nothing again at that time, what is our plan past that point?
You bet. Do you know what? Premier, that's going to be a great way for you to close off in your final comments, so let's just keep going.
This is just food for thought. Thank you for your patience. The bilateral child care agreement with the federal government. Minister Schultz, is this what you expected when you signed it? I have worked in the sector for 25 years, and since Minister Schultz, I have lost track of the ministers and the ministries in charge of children as they've been changed so many times. The bald guy, the red-haired guy, the guy that was there before, and now the new guy. The bilateral child care agreement has not inspired confidence in the operators. We sincerely do not know who's minding the sector month to month, or the integrity of Alberta's interest in our child care system and the bilateral agreement. We have families who are making $400,000 a year and families who are making $40,000 a year, and they're paying the same payment for child care.
Yeah.
Thousands of children. Minister Matt Jones wrote to the federal government stating that under the current federal structure, it would require 200% increase in Alberta's input to maintain this.
I'm going to stop you. Minister Schultz, do you want to try and address this issue?
Detrimental.
You're like way over and not really on topic, but we're here.
It is related to the federal transfers, and Premier has used it before. And this is where they make a commitment that they were going to give us flexibility, and you're right. Then there was another minister that negotiated the second part of that. But all of those pieces, income testing, flexibility, we pointed out there wasn't enough money. They said that they would provide flexibility. They didn't provide any of it. And Premier often talks about it when it comes to healthcare, pharmacare, some of the dental programs. This is what they do. So they take our money and then they redistribute it, but tell us how to operate in areas of our provincial jurisdiction. And I think, especially early on, they were new government. Now we have a pattern here, and that's exactly what the Premier is trying to solve.
Okay, thank you. Over here.
Hi, Megan. I was really serious. I need the advice. I was on Tracy Allard's board. I was on Nolan's board. I have submitted policy to AGM. I went to the AGM. I'm going to the next one. But when I talk about the things that I'm writing in those policies, I really am getting pushback from incumbents to say, shh, don't say that out loud. Like, Like, are they scared of you? Because it really feels like I'm being told that I'm doing things wrong.
What policy are you talking about?
I have one about libraries, I have one about the Complex Education Needs Tribunal, and I have one about tracking supports and services.
Well, submit them all. I mean, we have a process. Yeah,
but
great.
When I try and do that with,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like locally, I get in
Okay,
trouble.
so we could take this offline and try and help you, but tonight we want to talk about Alberta Next and our relationship with Ottawa and where we're going. So let's do that. Nolan, please, MLA Dick, talk to this lady. I think everybody that's been in a line has talked tonight. Is that right? There's one that didn't. Okay, go ahead. Over here. Go ahead. Yep.
Just one question. What is the timeline on all of this? When are we going to know what are the specific dates when we get our vote and our say in all this?
Yeah. Okay. So, yep, easy. We talked about some of that tonight, but I'll let the Premier bookend it with closing comments. Premier, you've got a challenge in front of you. You can address some of the questions that just came in, and also the evening in general and these great people of Grande Prairie that we've just spent 2.5 hours with. So I'll turn it over to you before I wrap it up.
Well, thank you all for participating in the conversation and putting a bunch of new ideas on the table for us to consider. We have to kind of, because we've got a constitutional framework, some of the ideas, though I love them, like collecting all the taxes and then just submitting to Ottawa the share that they are owed for their areas of jurisdiction, that's more like a European Union style of tax collection, and I love it. However, the feds have not agreed to that with Quebec, so we may just have to collect our own share and then see where it goes from there. But I guess that's the question that we're having here is, at what point do we start taking on more of these duties? And maybe we couldn't when we first became a province. I think somebody mentioned that there were 70,000 people in Alberta in 1905, and maybe we couldn't when we went bankrupt through the 1930s, and maybe we couldn't when we only had 1 or 2 million people. But now we're 5 million people, and we're the third largest economy, and we've got $9 trillion worth of value below our feet that everybody in the world wants. So maybe now is the time to act on the ideas that have been talked about for the last 20 or 30 years. That's why we're asking you what you think. The question about the frustration around social programs, all I would say is to reinforce what Minister Schultz said, is this is the pattern that the government does. They overtax us, and then they trickle money back to us based on their requirements for our program, oftentimes making them more expensive. And then as they get more and more expensive, we're just stuck with the tab and they continue to take the dollars. And that's the foundational problem with the relationship that we have, is they don't trust us to deliver the programs. And so then they tell us how to do it, and then they shortchange us, and they take the extra so that they can spend it in, let's face it, places that are more likely to vote Liberal. That's often what has happened over the last number of years, and that's what it perpetuates the imbalance that everybody out west feels, and in Alberta in particular. So that's why we wanted to look at this as a package. How do we assert our areas of jurisdiction? And I think we've got some very good feedback on all of these fronts. The timeline for how we're going to bring these ideas forward to you, I think there were 2 questions asked. The timeline for the 9 demands I have, that's Grey Cup. So that's one part. We'll know whether or not we're making progress on that within the next couple of months. But the timeline on these items, we're going to meet as a committee after October 1st. We want to have our deliberations done before the end of October so that we can put a report forward before the end of the year. And there'll be some items that we decide we're not going to move on. There'll be some items that we decide we heard enough. We are going to move on them when we don't need a referendum. And there's some that might be needed to be put to the people for a decision. And that we're planning in sort of the spring, like May or June. And so just we'll try to put it around seating so that it doesn't interfere too much with the work of our food producers. But that's the time frame that we want to be able to move. So at least we'll have it decided, because I heard some frustration. We've been talking about this a long time. It's go time. We either decide yes or no, and so that's the time frame that we're working towards. So we're getting close to the end here, and I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. It's been a really fun and robust discussion, and you gave us a lot of laughs this evening and also a lot to think about. So thank you.
I do get the last word. I do get the last word. All I wanted to say was it's been an observation that when you bring some of these difficult discussions up, some on the left side of the political scale don't want you to talk about them. But what we have found by traveling out about Alberta is this is exactly what we should be doing. We should be talking about immigration with Albertans and addressing the issues maturely and having difficult discussions about what we might do differently. So thank you for giving us something to think about tonight. And would you join me in thanking this panel that does such great work? Thank you.